Dewan. There's Dewan.
Okay.
Okay. John Rosenthal.
Here.
Dominic Moranti. Dominic, you here yet? Dominic? No, not yet. Okay. Shersha?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Calvin?
Here.
Eileen Helen?
Here.
And Tiffany Garriga.
Garriga is here.
Okay, so we have 9 anyway. We'll start with, let me tell you that the copies of draft minutes of the January 11th and January 19th meetings have been provided to the council members and have also been posted on the city website. Oh, I'm getting a message from Dominic. Somehow he can't use the, I don't understand why he can't use it, but okay. If somebody wants to send him a link, maybe that'll help. Communications. Shaheem, can you post the first communication, please? Okay, the first communication for tonight's meeting is from the Hudson Dog Control Report. Okay, there you have it. And the next communication, please, Shaheem. Oops, nope. You want to shrink that so everybody can read it?
Can I make a request, please?
Sure.
I'm making a request that we have some type of flyer, so to speak, about our dog officer. It's great. He's doing a wonderful job. He's constantly giving us reports. But we still in the communities from time to time see people that are still picking up puppies, stray dogs, lost dogs, you know, and still posting on social media, which is also wonderful. But we should have some type of, you know, flyer just around the city. So
Okay.
when that does happen, they can see that and make that phone call before it goes to social media.
Got it. So a flyer to alert people to that we have a dog officer
And
and
his
how to contact
information to contact him.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. And here is Tracy's letter alerting us to the fact that she has done her annual accounting. Okay, so with those 2 communications, let's go to reports. And up first is the fire chief and commissioner. Nick, are you there?
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Hi, Nick.
Good.
And I think Tim is here too. I think Hutch is here too.
Yeah, he's on, should be on his phone.
Okay.
He was just
So-
gonna try to get
So
in.
let's have your report, please.
So for last year, we had a total of 396 calls for service from January 1, 2020 until the end of December. And then in January of this year, we had 29 total calls for service. Started out pretty slow. We went a week without a call and then it picked back up. So that's where we are with that. Did just want to speak on the one resolution that should be in front of everybody tonight, which is the LoSAP
It is.
points that we requested due to COVID.
Nick,
what
can
that is.
you explain to everybody what the whole process is quickly? Yeah.
Absolutely. The LoSAP program, we have to, guys need to get a total of 50 points to get their LoSAP credit for the year. That's done through fire calls, drills, miscellaneous activities, trainings, and different things like that. And each activity is worth a point. Each drill is worth a point, up to 20. And to make 10% of the calls for the year, that's worth 25 points. Unfortunately, because of COVID, numerous miscellaneous activities, parades, work details were canceled, including 2 months of drills, which there's 3 drills a week. So there was quite a few drills canceled. The state passed legislation because of the coronavirus that municipalities could provide points for the members so they can get to their 50. So we tallied up everything we had. We submitted to the council president everything and asked that the council approves 2 points per member for 9 months. So it'll be a total of 18 points for the guys, and that affects 30 people in the department that wouldn't have reached their points without it. The only members that have reached their points are the officers, the chiefs, safety officer, medical officer, as well as the lieutenants and the captains in the department. Without the extra points being awarded, there is no way that they could have reached the 50 points for the year.
And this is in order to qualify for a very slight retirement.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it'll give the guys the points for the year 2020. And we'll be right on par where we've been for every other year. I think we'll end up with a total of 43 members for the year. And I think we've been at 41 or 42 every other year.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else in your report?
I don't have anything else. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that, but.
Council members, any questions? Hutch, is there any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tiffany.
I'm sorry, Nick. Can you explain it again about the whole points? I don't get it.
So we're allowed to get the points to receive our retirement benefit, but we have to total 50 points per year, and those points are gathered by attending drills, activities such as parades, inspection day, details to clean the firehouse, and calls, and meetings. The department has 4 meetings per year. However, you can only get 20 points a year for drills. You can only get 25 points if you make 10% of the calls. So that's only giving guys a total of 45 points. With everything being canceled because of COVID, there wasn't the opportunity for all the members to even get to their 50 points.
And you're asking the city to I don't understand. What are you asking the city?
So there was legislation passed by the state and signed by the governor that allows municipalities to award points to allow the members to get their 50 points, because all the stuff that was canceled due to COVID during the year, we're asking for each member to be given 2 points per month for 9 months, which is a total of 18 points. And we provided Tom with a list of the numerous things that were canceled during the year because of the pandemic that we have had every other year, and guys would have had the opportunity to get the points.
So I have a question. Does it?
One
I'm sorry.
second.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just have a follow-up to that comment. Well, you guys do a lot of hard work and deserve your points, and I know a lot of things have been put on pause because of COVID. I just wanted, my last question for right now is, if the city was to go forward with that, being that you said the state has allowed this, does it cost the city anything to do that?
No.
Well, it would just be giving the guys their points, so it would be the same where it's $700 per person, which was passed years ago for the program itself. It would just give us the normal amount of people that we have in the program. It would give them their points. There's nothing extra that the city's giving. You would be if it's not allowed, it would be taking that away from 30 members of the department.
Jane, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Tom. So I get that you're waiving this because, or the state is allowing the cities to waive this stuff because of the COVID. Is there an end date to this present program where you'd go back to requiring the attendance to the various things, or is that kind of open-ended depending on where the whole COVID thing goes?
Well, I think the state put an end date of the exception for the points to end in 2022.
Okay.
And I think they would be as a on needed basis. If COVID continues this year and they're seeing things are shut down, I'm sure they're going to try to approve it again.
Okay.
As long as things get back going, the fire department will be there for whatever we're requested for, as we always have been. We didn't even get that opportunity to do this year.
Understood. Okay, so the designated end date is 2022.
Right.
Something happens. Okay, thank you. That answers.
Thank you.
Hutch, do you have anything you want to add? I guess not. Any other questions from the council? Oh, Tiffany again.
Do these points affect you as being a police officer as well?
Has nothing to do with the police department. It is strictly for the fire department.
Okay. But it doesn't affect you.
I've reached my 50 points because I'm a chief officer in the department. So I don't need any extra points. Like I said, the officers already have the points because the officers are given extra points throughout the year based on what was passed in the LoSAP program.
And this
So
is for the fire department, right?
Yep.
Strictly fire department, and I'm doing this for all the guys in the department that need the points and are in this program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Does the public have any questions?
Hey, I have a question, Nick.
Sorry, Dawn. Go ahead.
Hey, Nick, what's the
Hi, Dawn.
status of the, hey, Nick, how are you?
Good.
What's the status of the fire truck?
It's coming. They got a little bit behind because of COVID, but we're looking at early to midsummer for delivery.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Looking forward to it, Antoine.
Yeah.
So are we.
And what about the update on selling the old one? Sorry.
Yeah, I believe a department from down south had reached out to the commissioner of some interest in it. And I think he's working through a couple things, and I'm thinking in the next month or two, we'll probably see something more with that of interest with that. So
I'm here now.
Oh, Hutch. Anything you want to add, Hutch?
Yeah, as far as the ladder truck for sale, we haven't officially advertised it because of all the hiccups with COVID. I didn't want to put the cart before the horse. But we did get a call from a fire department in Tennessee, Madisonville, Tennessee, and they've offered us $150,000 for it. We were going to advertise it for $175,000, and with the broker fee of 10%, if we advertise it, you're going to come right around there anyways. I was not going to bring that up, but since we're here and talking, there is an offer on the table already for the truck, and we haven't even advertised it.
That's good.
Is it okay, Jeff, to do that?
I'd have to look at it, but I think if we solicited it somehow and make a finding that it's equivalent, I mean, I'm not sure.
Okay,
I mean, it would give an indication possibly that we were underpricing it. I'm not sure where the 175 is derived from. I suppose.
That's if you look at all of the market, all the trade advertising firms, and look at the condition of the trucks, the miles, issues that they may have. It's kind of like the median.
Haven't we already signed the contract with the agent?
No, we did not sign that yet.
Okay,
The city did authorize a resolution to advertise with those people.
right.
Mhm.
We did not move forward as of this point, mostly because of COVID.
Okay, we can figure this out offline.
Yep.
You know, the procedure.
Okay.
Anything else for fire? Okay, Nick, Hutch, thank you very much.
Have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
Next up is the youth department, and I see both Maya and Nick are here. Nick, you wanna, or who wants to speak first?
I think I can speak. Do you want me to share my screen? I can share an agenda,
Yes,
youth report.
okay,
You guys see that?
yep. There you go.
So, as a lot of you guys know, we are currently closed all in-person after-school programming at the youth department. And we did that about a month ago as kind of out of an abundance of caution. And so currently we are doing online programming for youth. We are still doing daily academic support for a number of youth who are in virtual learning. And so we're providing that support to some of the families who are having a harder time with the virtual learning at home. And then we're doing a variety of other programs to try to support youth while we're in this pandemic. But it's been a tough time, and we're trying to get all of our energy and put it towards what we can. And the biggest thing that we're working on is fixing up the building, which, as many people know, has long needed a lot of renovations, and we can do a lot as a staff. And so we've been undertaking a lot of renovations. I'll go through some of the details, and we'll save some of it for future meetings. We can get some pictures of the finished product. But so yeah, we've got the virtual programming, the academic support. While we're not doing the food drop-offs that we had been over the summer into the fall, the larger community food program that we're still facilitating through partners is still delivering food to, I want to say, close to 50 families a week, with our partnership with Columbia County Sanctuaries Movement and other organizations. So that's still a big need, and we definitely still hear from a lot of families that there are still food needs. There's a lot of food insecurity out there. So we're in discussions about, once the weather warms up, whether getting back to those food drop-offs and deliveries may happen again. We've also had some time to do a lot of trainings that we've been interested in looking into, and have now had the capacity to take on. Some of them we're doing in-house, some of them we're bringing in professionals. We've done a number of them over the past couple months. A few of them we have here: therapeutic crisis intervention, which is obviously very important for youth workers; introduction to restorative justice practices; harassment in the workplace. The restorative justice component is a big one, and it's the beginning to a much larger program that we're undertaking at the youth department and really looking at all of the services we provide through the lens of restorative justice and integrating restorative justice practices into the daily work of all of our youth workers and kind of the, like I said, the lens which we look through all the work we do through. And so that's a much larger process that we're going through that our staff will be undertaking over the course of the entire year. We've just started kind of the introductory trainings, which has been exciting, and it's been very successful so far. So looking at the actual space and the physical spaces at the youth department and the work that we've been doing, as folks who've been to the youth committee meetings before know, one of the big things that we had to transition very quickly into with COVID was working with youth in smaller groups, which meant dividing the youth center space up so that dedicated groups of youth could be served independently to lower the risk of transmission. And we did some temporary work in the fall, but now that we're closed for afternoon programming, we've undertaken a series of kind of renovations that are really going to allow us to, during COVID, serve much smaller groups, spread out in a much safer way. And then once we move past this, we'll have great dedicated spaces so that some of the things we can never provide before in terms of homework help, quiet spaces, places for kids to relax, and restorative justice spaces and areas where if a kid is having a bad day or spiraling out, they can go and have some calm and quiet. They just never existed before at the youth department because of the way that the building was set up. And so we're really looking at putting together a center that has a lot of individual spaces as opposed to one or two big spaces like we did before. So I'll go over the basics of them, but I'm not going to occupy too much of the meeting because I know we want to keep it moving. And hopefully in the next month or two, we'll have some great photos so we can actually show you guys what it'll look like. But you can see some of the ideas. Chill Vibes Room was already started while the kids were still there, and that was a huge hit, just providing a place for kids to be. Our computer room has been completely revamped, and it's just an amazing space in there. Tech room, third floor storage. We redid our office and combined a lot of spaces into one smaller one for office space. Now it gives us an entire another room for restorative justice work. And the big change is that we've, with the approval from the council last month, we have the money to redo the floor in the gym, which, as all of the youth who come to the youth department and so many of the families we serve know, has been a huge problem for a long time. And so that's actually starting next week. And that's going to be one of the biggest improvements of the youth department that we've seen in a long time. And a lot of folks are really excited about it. So, we get lemons, we make lemonade. And I think that what we're really excited about is when these kids come back, they're really going to be walking into a different place altogether. In addition to making these rooms, having a new gym floor, almost the entire interior is getting repainted and spruced up. Big improvements all around. And so it's really going to be an exciting new thing to welcome the kids and the families back in, because it's going to be a greatly improved space for them. And it's been really hard to not be communicating and working with the youth every day. And I know that a lot of families have reached out and said that the kids are really having a difficult time not being able to go to school, not being able to come to the youth center. So we're really excited for when we can get them back there to show them how much we care about them and the work that we've put in to try to show them that. So again, we'll have more photos in months to come as we get that worked out and we get the spaces finished. And then our junior staff have been working hard on this online content. and working through what kids actually check into and see and what they want to participate in and what they don't. Working with the school districts and other organizations to collaborate on online programming. And so it's difficult, but it's an exciting time. Again, I want to try to keep everything to a minimum. So that's the basic update for where we're at. The big news is that we are going to be going through some significant staffing changes. And the big announcement that I'll give you all right now is that we are going to be beginning a job search process for my role, for the director role. And that's a big position. So we'll be going through a full hiring process for that, which will be doing a lot of outreach.
No,
Wow.
no, Nick, no. What can we do to keep you? The kids
Well-
love you. You made such tremendous changes, and
What's
people
going
can watch
on?
throughout the videos how people from the public have advocated for you, screaming for you. Like, what do we have to do to keep you?
Well, luckily, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to be an advocate. I think when I signed up for this job over 4 years ago, I never thought I would still be doing it. I wanted to jump in. I saw that the youth department was in a difficult place. I think at that point, I think the existence of the youth department was in question. And I felt like it really needed somebody to defend it. And I stepped in. And I've been doing that for 4 years, and I've been happy to do it. It's been difficult, but it's been an amazing process. And I think the decision that I've been thinking about for a while, and that we've been talking with staff and with my family about, is that I think we've gotten to the point where the community has spoken, and a lot of folks within the city government have spoken and really shown that we do value the youth department. And we've got the staffing to a place where we finally have full-time positions for some of the people who have dedicated their lives to the youth department. We're making big improvements to the building. And I think that the department is in a place where I think we're ready to make a transition to a new person and let somebody new come in and usher in a new phase of growth for the youth department. And I think I'm ready at a certain level too, to go on to my next phase and think about what's next for me. But you all know, Malachi, Tiffany, you know what my commitment is to the youth and to the community. So you know that I'm not going to stop advocating. I'm not going to stop working with the youth. And I'm not going to stop doing everything I can. And also, this is the beginning of a process. So I'm not leaving tomorrow. I'm going to be overseeing the entire job search and hiring, and probably staying on to help integrate them. So nobody's getting rid of me for a few months at least. I'll be around for a while, and overseeing and making sure that the next step is the right choice, and that everything is happening in the best interest of the youth and of the community, which is what we've always strived to do. But I appreciate your kind words.
I really appreciate, I'm sorry, Tom, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, Nick. I really appreciate all the efforts and changes and working with you throughout the years. I've seen changes in the youth and families, and a lot of good things that you have created out of the youth department. And it's going to be sad to see you go. So whoever's going to step into your shoes, they have some pretty big shoes to fill. So I thank you again for all your work and dedication.
Here, here.
Nick
Thank-
forever.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Let's, there'll be plenty of time to, let's save some of the encomiums for Nick for future meetings, because he'll be around a while.
It's true.
That was nicely put, Tiffany. Thank you. Meanwhile, well, actually, Maya, would you like to contribute to the youth discussion for tonight?
Well, so I feel that Nick has given a great outline of all that's been going on.
Oops.
Been remarkable work that he and the staff have been doing during this whole COVID period, and really taking the opportunity to really set into motion some very important transformations that are absolutely in keeping with, why I accepted the mayor's appointment last year ago, is that to be a part of this movement forward for youth and families. And of course, this is a very hard moment to, but I respect where Nick is coming from, and yeah, it's very emotional. But we are in a very good place, and it's very much thanks to Nick having stepped in over 4 years ago and taking on this this leadership in this way with this vision. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Maya. Dewan, did you have something you wanted to ask? Okay. Council members, are there any questions for Nick or Maya? Council members? I don't see any hands.
Thank you, Maya, for your work as well.
Thank you,
She's
Tiffany.
staying, I hope. Okay, the community, any
Thank you,
questions?
Tiffany.
Oh, any questions for for Nick or Maya? Raise your hand on the computer here. I can't see everybody at once, as you probably know. So if you raise your hand, I can see it in the participants on the right. But I don't see any hands. In that case, okay, Bill, you have a question? Bill? You gotta unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Nick, I was wondering if you could explain maybe the history of the youth department taking over maintenance of the Oakdale Park. Was that your idea? Was it DPW's idea? Was it a collaboration?
No, that was before my time, Bill, so I can't explain that to you. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm wondering why it seems to be such a problem to empty garbage cans at the park. There's been one, at least one, at the back entrance that hasn't been emptied, and I'm pretty sure it's 3 months now, and it's overflowing. I'm just wondering what the problem is.
We definitely check all the garbages there once a week in the winter and much more often in the season. One of the big issues that we have there is that we do have homeowners who do bring their personal garbage in, and so where a garbage can normally would take a long time to fill up, if a couple larger bags get put in there, if somebody's a homeowner's garbage because they don't want to go through the other process, it fills them up very quick. And so that is something that definitely happens. But I can go over there tomorrow, Bill, and take a look and make sure if any of them are full that we can empty those out.
Well, I'm confused. You say that you go there every week, but I know because I walk in the park about every other day. That garbage can has not been touched in 3 months, Nick, at least. I just don't understand. I send you emails, you either ignore them or what, but it's not being done. And it's our public park. I don't get it.
Okay, well, he's promised to look into it tomorrow. Is there a new question? Bill?
The question is, why isn't it being done?
No, that's the same question. I'm asking you, is there a new question?
To Nick?
Yeah.
No, that's it. It's
Okay.
just ridiculous. It's ridiculous
Bill.
to have overflowing garbage cans, Nick. It's not acceptable.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Let's see. Any other questions for Nick? It doesn't seem to be. So with that in mind, Robin Waters, the Commissioner for the Elderly, is up next.
Hello, thank you. So I just want to give a brief update just in the interest of everyone's time, and then I can answer questions and go into more specifics as people need. So we're in the process now of putting together a website so that our programs can be more easily accessible to our seniors while they're at home during our all of these stay-at-home orders. But we've been trying to keep our virtual classes going. So we've had our yoga class and aerobics class going for a while. We added a building immunity and maximizing health class. We also added another core strength and balance class, gentle stretching, things like this. We got feedback back in the spring when we had to stop programs, the aerobics specifically, that people really felt the difference when they were able to exercise regularly. They felt that maintain their balance, maintain their muscle tone, things like that. So there is a lot of momentum around maintaining the classes we have and building on those classes, because people being home are really struggling to get the exercise that they need to maintain their mobility and independence in that way. So we're hoping to launch their website. We're a little behind. We were hoping for February 1st. We had to make some changes to some of the classes and just get some final edits in. One of the things that we've focused on is trying to make some of the resources that are available in the county more accessible and all in one place for seniors, so they could go and see everything laid out, similar to how the city of Hudson had it, but we wanted to really focus on accessibility. So we added a step-by-step guide to how to apply for HEAP benefits, a step-by-step guide to how to apply for the STARS Enhanced benefit, things like this to raise awareness about these programs. We also have a section related to advocacy. I don't know if people were following the situation in the nursing homes, but Letitia James just released her report about what was happening in the nursing homes and just how horrendous the situation was or continues to be. But there are a lot of groups advocating for better care, and for the caring majority specifically is trying to raise caregiver pay. And that's caregivers in nursing homes, caregivers with people with disabilities, caregivers across the board in the state of New York. It's a $4 billion ask, and they are kicking off that campaign tomorrow. So given the situation in the nursing homes, it's of the utmost importance, because if people were able to stay home and have quality care, and a caregiver who was compensated, they could have kept people out of nursing homes. And really the movement now is aging in place. And so a lot of the advocacy work is on creating programs where people can maintain their independence and age in place. So there will be information about all of that on the website if people are interested in learning more about it. So that's kind of the general overview. I don't know what questions people have, if they want specifics on any aspect of that.
Okay, I see Tiffany has her hand up. Tiffany.
I was just curious of the attendance that you're receiving with your online classes.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have regular attendance for the classes, and that was part of the reason we wanted to make the links more accessible, so that people who weren't already in the classes could join and easily join. So it ranges anywhere between 5 and 20, and it just really depends on the class, the instructor, all of that stuff. So it varies. And it's with new programs, we find that it takes a while for them to get the attendance, just so as word of mouth gets out there. And we're going to hopefully, one thing that the senior center is kind of struggling with is the staffing, and trying to balance that out with the precautions for the virus, and making sure everybody is safe and trying to get things going. But one thing what we do need to do more of is advertising of the classes, and so we're hoping our website would help with that as well.
Do you need us to help you?
That would be great. Yes.
Sorry. I would say maybe contact individually the councilman, and we can see how we can help you distribute that information per ward.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I could I forward the link to everybody too for the website for the information they need.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Any other council members have questions for Robin?
I just want to add, I've mentioned this in the meetings in the past, but in terms of the raising caregiver pay, they are asking that the pay be above minimum wage. And the only other state that did that, according to the carrying majority, was Illinois, but they only raised caregiver pay to minimum wage. New York is the only one trying to get it above and recognizing that care requires a level of expertise, right? It's not necessarily a minimum wage job at all. But I wanted to also add that there is a caregiver shortage in Columbia County. So if somebody needs one, they can't necessarily get one, and not everyone is aware of that until they need one. So by raising caregiver pay, it would hopefully encourage more people to go into that field and help alleviate that shortage.
There's a question from the community, Becky Siegel.
Yes, thank you. My question or my suggestion for advertising on the senior center would be perhaps getting in touch with Lance Wheeler so he could include that on his weekly broadcast, because there's a number of seniors that are not comfortable or even have a computer that may not be aware of it. The other portion was my question is about the caregivers. Are these licensed caregivers that have had training, or would this be like a family member who is doing the caregiver work?
So that I'm not sure I can answer that the best, because that's kind of more for the carrying majority. They might find the answer on their website, but it is for both, I believe, because there's a policy in New York State where someone who is a family caregiver could apply to be compensated. So that pay would be raised, but then also a trained caregiver.
You have a follow-up, Becky? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Uh-oh.
You got to unmute yourself, Becky. Ms. Siegel? Nope.
Oh, wait. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Can I?
I'm unmuted now, yes?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm muted now. Yes.
Yeah, I had screen pop up that blocked me from getting at it. Is there any comment or thought on the Lance Wheeler portion of things because he is on the local cable channel? And what about something, posters or some kind of notices in doctor's offices for people that might be interested in caregiving, as well as people who feel, or if the doctor would feel that they needed a caregiver? Because if somebody said to me, where do I go to sign up to be a caregiver? I would have no idea where to direct them.
Sure. So that's really good, important feedback. I mean, there are a couple caregiving agencies in Hudson. There's Anytime Home Health, and so there are places in Hudson that people could go to directly, but we can make a info sheet that we can share.
Okay.
And I can reach out to Lance Wheeler about getting that information to people who aren't online.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you,
Becky. There don't seem to be any other questions for Robin. Thank you, Robin, for your report. Up next is Heather Campbell with the financial report. Heather, are you there?
I am here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
You sure can.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if that's okay.
Great. Yes.
Can't hear anything.
It's just sharing her screen. I don't know. Shaheem, is she? Here we go. Okay.
Okay, so you can see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so again, echoing some of the other department heads, I'm going to try and keep this brief because I know you have a long meeting ahead of you.
No, don't, you know, you don't have to do that.
Okay, well, So just some top line notes. We do have the 2019 audit draft completed. The goal was to have it completed by the end of the year. We got a very late start. We were actually ready to, we were on schedule to get it done on time, except that because HCDPA is a component agency of the city, their results have to be included in our audit, and their audit is not yet complete. So we had to file a notice on the municipal bond market, it's called EMMA, because we did not meet that deadline. I'm not terribly concerned about that because I think a lot of other municipalities will be in the same place because of COVID, but obviously it's not ideal. The very good news, which I'm very pleased about, is literally there were no adjustments from the auditors in terms of our financials. So they found absolutely nothing wrong with them. So that's nice.
Mhm.
We talked about the borrowing, and I know Nick Piero talked about the fire truck and the pushback on that. That actually worked out kind of nicely for us because it meant that we didn't have to go out as early as we had initially planned, which also allowed us to get enough information in order to create a bond resolution for Promenade Park, which you all approved last month. So now, instead of going out with about 2.8 million, we're going out with about 4.1 million. And we'll be going out either this month or early in March. And that's going to include, and again, this is a ban. So we're going to borrow it for 1 year. And that's because the 3 out of the 4 things that we're borrowing for are going to have some grant reimbursement component. So we have to borrow for the whole project, but we don't want to bond the whole thing because we're going to get that reimbursement back. So once we get the reimbursement back, we use that money to pay off part of the ban, and then we transfer it to a bond. So the 4 things that are going to be included in this first borrowing are the fire truck that we just talked about, the water quality improvement program, which is a replacement of a water line on Washington Street, WIA, which is the Water Infrastructure Something Act, and that is putting in new pump stations for the sewer system. And then Promenade Park is, of course, the DRI project that's focused on the development of Promenade Park. That we're going to go out in this year, which means the interest will be due in a year from now. Based on that, it should be about $35,000 in interest, and then we'll refinance whatever is still outstanding. If we get all the grants in by that time, we would just go straight to a bond. Otherwise, we'd probably do a ban again until we have all of the financing resources that are going to help refund us in place. Tom, would you like me to pause for questions after each sort of point, or do you want me to go through the whole thing and then open up for questions?
Let's go through the major section there first and then open it up.
Okay.
The major section, yeah.
Okay. So the second round of borrowing, there's going to be, unless something changes dramatically, we're going to have another round of borrowing toward the mid to 3/4 section of 2021. And that's because we're going to be coming up against expenses for the balance of the DRI project, most noticeably the streets component, which is about a $4 million project all on its own. We've been discussing the NIPA streetlights. Everybody agrees that it's a good idea. It's just, this was not the right time to do it given our financial situation. But, you know, depending on where we find out we are, we may want to start looking at that now. The AUD is called the annual update document, although OSC, which is the Office of the State Controller, has actually now changed its name, but I don't know what it is yet. But that is the very large financial report that has to be submitted to the Office of the State Controller by May 1st of every year. It's basically a summary of all of the 2020 financials, both balance sheet and income statements, as well as a fair amount of other supporting documentation, including debt schedules and so forth. It's about 1.5 inch thick document. So we're starting to work on that. One nice thing about that is over the past few years, I've actually taken on a goodly amount of work that our fee accountants used to do. So that's saved the city about $15,000 to $18,000 a year. So I will be very busy in the next few months working on that. While it might be possible to have this resolution for the next for the formal Common Council meeting, I'm not going to guarantee it, but it's what we used to call encumbrances. We don't do encumbrances anymore. We do what's called assigned unappropriated fund balance. And if anybody wants to know what that means, I'm happy to explain it. I know it's some financial, convoluted language, but we work with what OSC gives us. But basically what that is a combination of what used to be encumbrances, which means, if you ordered something or you signed a contract in 2020, but the work wasn't completed or it wasn't delivered in full until 2021, you have to set that money aside because you've already committed it. Same thing for grants and donations. Any grants and donations that the city receives need to be committed to whatever the grant or donation was for. So that means if we receive grant monies or receive donations and there's a balance left at the end of the year, when we close out the financial year, that technically drops to fund balance, but then we need to take it back out of fund balance because those are also committed funds. So we may have a draft for that for the formal Common Council meeting, but if not, we will definitely have one for the March meeting.
Right.
And the last thing is, again, we have this corrective action plan that we filed with OSC. The primary components of that are changing, creating more structure around accruals and actually creating a compensated time policy, because the city's been offering and tracking compensated time for 30 or 40 years, but there's actually no policy in place and nothing in any of the union documentations that call for it.
Well, maybe, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
We might be able to deal with that pretty soon. We're starting a conversation with the county about our HR needs, and this seems to me like something that they may be able to help us with. But I'll let you know.
That would be perfect.
You're going to be part of that conversation for sure. So.
Okay, yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
I know we talked about that a little bit in the compensation committee, and that would
Right.
be the other group that could also take a look at it, I think, and be
Exactly.
involved in it.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so
I'll
we're
let
on the
you know
same
about
page
that
on that for
shortly.
sure.
Exactly. Council members, so far, any questions? Raise your hand, please. And remember, I can't see you, so you could also just start talking. Okay, you want to go ahead with the actuals, the November actuals, and Heather?
Sure, and that's a typo. It's December actuals. I apologize. In fact, I can change that right now.
Sort of. Oh.
Never mind.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so these are some of the sort of regular revenues that we've been tracking. So not much of a surprise here. It's been trending pretty much the same way that it has since COVID hit. You can see as a grand total for different avenues of parking revenues, we're at 57% of budget. So basically a little over half of where we should be. That number is going to change somewhat because I know we have some on-off-street parking revenue, which is meter money. That has been deposited but not yet recorded in the general ledger system, and you'll see that on the next page as well, but certainly not enough to bring it up to anywhere close to what the budget was. Yeah, and you can see again, tickets are the strongest pretty much, as well as just general permits. And the front street lot is the lowest by far, and that makes sense because, you know, generally the people who are buying those are either commuting into the city for work or likely primarily commuting into the city for work. And obviously, since many people are working from home now, there's no need for that. It's going to be interesting to see if and when that rebounds. To give you an idea, we didn't have any revenue in October or November, and then in December we had, I think, $2,600 or roughly like that, when last year it was $26,000. So that's going to be a really interesting thing. That may be something that kind of never comes back. You know, just anecdotally, I have a friend who doesn't live in Hudson, but has an office, has a business, has an office in Manhattan, commuted down there, you know, through the Hudson train station 3 or 4 days a week. And they gave up their office space entirely. So he may never be coming back. That's just one example, anecdotally. Building permits and fees. Building permits actually came in pretty well. We got some good numbers in the last couple of months, so that's looking pretty strong. So we're at 94% of budget, which is, you know, better than I think we had been anticipating 6 months ago. And in terms of other tax revenues, sales tax is at 71%, but we are still missing 1/4 of sales tax. We don't get it until February, and that's for October, November, December of the year before. So that gets what's called charged back. We put that revenue back into the 2020 number. So I think that number is going to be strong. Mortgage tax, we're basically on target, little percent over, and obviously lodging tax is where we're taking the huge hit. At slightly under $100,000 versus a forecast of, you know, over $250,000.
Oh, there's still another quarter on the lodging tax, or just 1 month? Oh, I see. You
There's
said
1 month. So we have all the filings through November. And then the filing in March is for December, January, and February. So 1/3 of that will be charged back.
Okay.
So do you have any questions on that before I move on to the next page?
Questions from the council? Anyone? Okay, I guess you can move on, please.
Okay, so this is just taking a look at something we've been tracking, you know, since the COVID, impact of COVID. And this is looking at non-property tax revenues. And the reason why we're looking at non-property tax revenues is because, and I'm explaining this, I've explained it before to the finance committee, but since there are a number of other people there, when we budget for property tax itself, the taxes that everybody pays on their properties, that revenue is recognized on January 1st of the year. So we recognize the full amount of property tax revenue. It becomes what's called a receivable. So we recognize all the revenue, but it doesn't mean we've collected all the taxes. So we have what's called a receivable, which is an item on the balance sheet, and it's considered an asset. And then as the taxes get paid, that number goes down. So including that in any kind of revenue forecast just sort of throws everything off because it's recognized on the first day of the year.
Right.
So what this shows you is the first column here was the 2019 actuals. And then this just shows you the different projections month to month that I've been providing in terms of showing what the potential impact might be. At this point, there's obviously no difference between the high impact scenario and the low impact scenario because we have numbers through the end of the year at this point, except for chargebacks. But I just left it in here for consistency's sake.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
I don't see any yet. Okay. Next.
Okay, so let's get to the more disturbing part. unfortunately. Okay, so I think starting last year, I started trying to do a projection for where 2020 would end up. Because as I said, there are several elements that happen after the end of the calendar year that still impact the fiscal year. So this is my first cut for what 2020 may end up looking like. So you can see our original budget was $11.945 million. And for those of you who don't know, municipal budgets have to be balanced. So revenues and expenditures have to match. And that's because unlike a, nonprofit or a for-profit, we're not trying to actually make money. The 2020 adjusted budget was 13.2 million, just about. And actuals so far prior to chargebacks, we have revenue of 9.9 million and expenditures of roughly 2 million, or a deficit of $1.2 million. Now, chargebacks impact both revenue and expenditures. So for example, as Tom asked, we're going to get 1 month of lodging tax revenue for December that we will get it in March, but it will get charged back to December of 2020. I'm anticipating that based on current trends to be about $7,500. The big one, obviously, is the sales tax, and we mentioned that when we talked about the sales tax numbers. We're looking at 1 quarter, 1 full quarter of sales tax revenue. Right now, I've plugged that in at 450,000. It's, an estimate. We did have a strong 3rd quarter, so it might be higher than that. I went back and I looked through several years to see what the relationship between the 3rd quarter and the 4th quarter were, and unfortunately there wasn't a whole lot of consistency. So this may be conservative, it may be aggressive. As we talked, when I talked about the parking meter revenue, I know we have some meter money that's been deposited, but not yet recorded in the general ledger system. I'm estimating that to be about 20,000. The next line is Providence Hall and Schuyler Court true-ups. And what that is they both of those properties have pilots with the city. They pay a fixed quarterly amount, but the total that they owe is basically based on shelter rent. So there's always a difference between how much they pay in the 4 quarters they pay and how much they actually owe. So we get that's called the true up. So we get that and they get charged back to the prior year. I'm estimating that at about 10,000. Conversely, there's going to be 2 negative adjustments to revenue because we collect pilot money for the county pilot. That's for the parking lot swap that we have with Columbia County. And then the city, county, and school pilots are a handful of pilots that are not with the IDA, but with the city directly. It's North 5th Street Associates and 3 other ones that I can't remember the names of off the top of my head, but I could certainly look up if anybody's interested. So we identify all that revenue when it comes in, but the reality is it's not all revenue for the city because we have to turn around and share it with the county and the school. So those are my estimates for how much money we have to actually take out of that revenue, of those revenue lines in order to pay the county and the school. We also have some expenditure chargebacks, the biggest one being payroll chargebacks. And what that basically means is our payroll on 2/4 only had 4 days of 2021. I'm sorry, 1/4, January 4th, 2021. It only had 4 days of 2021 in it, but it had 10 days of 2020. So that all has to get charged back to 2020. So that's, I'm estimating at roughly 160,000. We'll have a more accurate number once all the departments finish their payroll chargebacks. Obviously, the Social Security that's associated with that also gets charged back. We will have 1 final distribution to the Tourism Board based on the 1st quarter of 2020, I believe. I'd have to double check when the
Yeah,
law changed.
it was in
I
March. or
can't,
April. So,
but in any case, we'll have one distribution. I think 10,000 is probably aggressive, given the fact that we did not bring in a bunch of lodging tax money this year. Although the first quarter was higher than obviously the last 3 quarters. But we will also be taking directly related expenditures out of that before we determine what the distribution is. So that's probably high. And like I said, this is my first cut, and obviously it's based on a lot of estimates. So take it with a grain of salt. I will be doing this every month until we have the year closed.
mhm.
So what that brings, no, go ahead, Tom.
The year closes in March.
In March.
Okay.
Yep.
So that, okay.
Yep. So net that gives an estimated revenue of 10.329 million against an estimated expenditures of 11.335 million, or a deficit of just about $1 million.
Okay.
So let's take that information. This next section here basically shows you what the impact on unassigned fund balance could potentially be. So we started 2020 with unassigned fund balance of 2.837 million. So in order to determine the impact of that, you add the revenues and you subtract the expenditures, which is basically the same thing as taking that 1.006 million out of it. That brings you down to 1.83 million. But then 499, almost $500,000 of that is going to be categorized as assigned and appropriated, because that's the amount that was used to balance the 2021 budget. And then in addition to that, there are a number of unspent expenditures in the 2020 budget that need to be reserved. And I spoke about that a little bit when I talked about the resolution for the unassigned, unappropriated fund balance. So again, these are basically either commitments that we've made to purchase goods or services that that we've made in 2020, but may not be completed until 2021. And it's any donations and grants that have not been spent in 2020, they need to carry over and be committed to the same lines in 2021. Right now, my estimate for that is about 720,000. There's a few things in there that I'm unsure of, and specifically there's some tourism board things that I'm unclear on. So I'm going to try and get some clarification on that, and hopefully that number will come down, but probably not substantially. That leaves us with unassigned fund balance of a little over $600,000, or 5% of the 2021 budget. That's another typo there. If people don't know, we do have a fund balance policy, and the fund balance policy currently calls for keeping the unassigned fund balance between 25 and 35% of the annual budget.
Did we renew that policy? I don't believe we did. Hello?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think we have. And then obviously, we're not doing it right now anyway. I guess the good news to all this is, of course, that the latest federal proposal does include aid to municipalities. And of course, we are still on target to sell properties to refund the fund balance. But putting that aside, any questions from council? Are you done, Heather? I think that's it, right?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Any questions from council members?
Yeah.
Jane?
Yeah, Heather, you just said there was the 2020 budget of 11,854. That is the actual 2021? Is that?
That is correct.
Okay, that was just, okay, so it's, okay, thank you.
Any other council members have questions? I don't see any hands. In that case, we have Becky Siegel.
All right.
There you go. Go ahead. Becky? What happened? I think she somehow. Becky Siegel, you there? No. Okay. Questions for Heather. Next question for Heather is Dave Marston.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Heather, so the executive summary of your forecast is we're off about 1.3 million. Is that accurate?
No, I think it's more accurate to say we're off by about 1 million,
Okay.
which is the second after looking at the chargebacks for revenues and expenditures.
So if
But
we,
even that's a little deceptive because, you know, as I said, about 700,000 of the expenditures. Let me rephrase it. It depends on how you classify things, but you know, if you look at the potential 2020 actuals of 10.3 versus 11.3, that's a loss of 1 million. But that 11.3 is understated by about $700,000 because there were expenditures in the budget that were not expended, and yet they still need to be. They're going to need to be added basically to the 2021 budget. Which is going to inflate the 2021 budget by that amount. So I'm not sure if that's clear, was it?
well, I guess I'm just curious in the sense of even given your forecast, let's say if you were off even by 50%, you're looking at $500,000 that's got to be found somewhere. And I guess from Tom's response, my understanding is go to the fund balance or sell existing properties. I guess that seems perhaps maybe not the most strategic way to think about planning for the budget. So I guess I was just curious if you were working with the mayor or the council president or BEA as it stands to think about how to work through that.
Well, we've certainly had a number of conversations about it, especially through the 2021 budget process. I mean, you know, I think the key number to look at is that unassigned fund balance number of 600,000. The city certainly can determine that it wants to lower the thresholds for a fund balance policy, and there can, but yeah, $350 billion in the federal aid package, but as far as I know, nobody knows what the breakout is by municipalities yet, but that certainly is going to help for sure. You're correct, and we've had this discussion before, selling buildings as a one-time revenue shot of revenue is not ideal. So the real issue going forward is either going to be, can we significantly raise revenues somehow? Can we significantly reduce expenditures? Or what can we do in order to not continue to use as much fund balance to balance the budget going forward? Because that's going to be the big challenge. You know, so yeah, it's going to be a very interesting challenge.
Next up is Becky Siegel. She's back.
I'm back, yes.
Hi.
Heather, you mentioned that you had taken over some of the work that the city's fee accountant had savings associated with that. Two questions. Who was the fee accountant for the city? And where was those funds realized that they were able to go to?
Our current fee accountant is Pattison Koski. And I'm sorry, I didn't entirely hear your second question.
I was asking for the amount of savings for the work that you took on, and then where that savings was realized, if that was just adjusted to what the fee accountant's budget would be, or where
Correct.
that money would
Yep.
be, where it would show the savings.
So we reduced,
make sense?
basically, we used to pay the fee accountant roughly, I mean, and this is going back a few years, like 23,000 or something like that. So accounting for inflation, it would probably be close to 25, 26, 27 at this point. And last year we paid them 8.
Okay, next up is John Kane.
That is
Oh, sorry.
great. No, that is great. I commend you on that. That's great.
Thank you. John Kane?
Thanks, Tom. And thank you, Heather, for, as always, an incredibly professional presentation. A couple of questions. Based on the way that 2020 has been shaking out, I mean, do we feel that revenues, as things sort of settle out, when the BEA conversation happens next year, are we going to be looking at another pretty significant pull from the fund balance? Based on your estimations and understanding that, you know, no one's holding your feet to the fire on that one.
This city has not had a budget that did not take a significant amount of fund balance to balance it since before my time.
Right.
I do not see any significant major factors that is going to change that. And frankly, that is one of my concerns. Because, you know, we used to have a pretty healthy fund balance, and we actually had several years where revenues exceeded expenditures. So we were increasing our fund balance. But yes, I think that unless very difficult decisions are made, it's going to be almost impossible to not continue to take money from the fund balance in order to balance the budget.
Certainly, I guess that's going to make it difficult if we have to go to the bond market. My second question, and this is just sort of general, and Tom, maybe you know this as well. As the economic aid package is talking about this money for state and municipalities, you know, what is the breakdown? Is New York getting a certain amount, or are municipalities getting money based on their budget shortfall, or is it going to be the population? I mean, is there any clue about how that money is going to be allocated, or are they just saying 350 billion, there you go?
I have an inquiry into Bill Rohr, who studied both the two CARES Acts, and he'll break it down for us at some point. But no, we don't know yet at all.
There's no clue about how that's coming in at all. Okay, thank you.
Next, Aaliyah Schneider.
Hi, thank you for your patience, Heather. I know you've explained this, but so that potential unassigned fund balance, 610,000 number, is that what is left over from the 2020 fund balance, and then that becomes 2021 fund balance?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit in your second half of your sentence.
Sorry, it sounds like someone else's mic is off with some background noise. I was asking.
Over, Bend, can you mute yourself?
They were muted. Okay. Sorry. The potential unassigned fund balance number, the 610,000. So is that what's left over from the 2020 fund balance, and that is what the fund balance is now for 2021, or does it like reset each year? How does that work?
No, it's a continuation. So basically, we started 2020 with about 2.8 million in unassigned fund balance. And there are other types of fund balance, but they're all different types of assigned because they're committed to things. So for example, we have a capital reserve for the fire truck. So the total fund balance number is much bigger. The unassigned fund balance is basically the money that the city has in order to, that the city can tap into or use in certain ways. One of the ways that we use it, for example, or at least used to when we had a more robust fund balance, is we would be able to, for example, loan money to either the water or the sewer funds, so they wouldn't have to take out, they wouldn't have to finance a project, and then when they would get the money back, they would pay the loan back. We're not going to be able to do that very much going forward. But what it basically means is ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to see if I can try and explain this. The city has a bunch of assets, right? So you've got cash in the bank, and you've got some property, and you've got accounts receivable, money that people owe you, taxes receivable, and so forth. And then you have, on the other side, you have liabilities, and liabilities are basically things that you owe. So, you have accounts payable, bills that you've accrued but you haven't paid yet, payroll that you haven't paid yet, et cetera, and so forth. The difference between the assets and the liabilities is the fund balance. And then once you take all of the different assigned fund balances out, so, the encumbrance, I'm going to use the word encumbrances, even though they're not really encumbrances anymore, capital reserves, other types of reserves, what you have left over when you take those out is the unassigned fund balance. And the unassigned fund balance, as I said, is basically what the city can look at to either, overcome shortfalls or, to fund budget amendments when people want to add, more expenditures to the budget. Or as I said before, to provide loans across funds and so forth. So it is a continuation. So basically, if these numbers were correct, what it would have meant is that our unassigned fund balance went from 2.8 million down to 600,000 in 1 year. So a loss of basically 2.2 million. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And so that remaining fund balance, does it remain, like, that wouldn't just go into the 21 budget, it would remain the fund balance?
Correct.
Right. The fund balance is technically, if you think about the budget is basically what's called an income statement. So it's the revenues and the expenditures for a given year. The other major financial thing is called a balance sheet. And the balance sheet is where you show the assets, the types of things I just described, and the liabilities, and the difference is the fund balance. So the budget starts at the beginning of every year. It ends at the end of every year. You know exactly how much revenue you've taken in and how many expenditures you've spent. And the difference, either if it's positive, if you've got more money than you did, than what you spent, that gets added to the fund balance. And obviously, if you spend more than you've got money, that gets taken out of the fund balance. So the balance sheet component and the fund balance is a number that just continues on in perpetuity. It just changes every year based on what happens with your revenues and expenditures.
Okay, are there any more questions? I don't see any hands up. Heather, thank you very much. Your monthly reports are always both enlightening and depressing, but that's the way it goes.
Yep.
I just think sometimes we all tend to fetishize what a fund balance is. As I've mentioned before, if you do some research, you'll see that many people who have talked about municipal finances during the COVID period have talked about aggressively using fund balances. Now, granted, what Heather said is correct about the future. We're going to have less revenue, so that we can't continually hit up the fund balance. So that's something to keep in mind. But thank you again, Heather. Let's move on to the Department of Public Works and Rob Perry. You there, Rob?
Yeah, I'm here. Are you doing the share screen or?
I gave it to Shaheem to put up.
All right.
Shaheem, can you put up that stuff I sent you from Rob Perry?
Because it's just not the same without my beautiful pictures.
Agreed. Let's see. Shaheem? Oh, okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Come on, Heather, cut a guy some slack. Yes. Ready?
Okay.
Ready, steady, goey. Speed round. All right, so we had a 2020 budget of $340,000 for septage receiving down at the sewer plant. This is what we take in from those trucks from private haulers. And the actual ended up being about 430,000. So we had a surplus revenue of about 110,000. Obviously, that is directly related to COVID because all of the city people have moved up here full time instead of weekending and whatever else. And all of their leach fields started to back up. And so lots of business out there. And we were happy to take it. I do have the annuals, just gives you an idea of how much we take in. We average about, what do I have here? About 40 loads a week. Each load's about 2,800 gallons. Total that we took in for the year was about 1%. I'm sorry, it was about 6.2 million gallons. And that may sound like a lot, but the facility can actually do 17 million gallons in a day. And, it actually is 1% of the flow that goes through the sewer plant over the course of the year. And it is 30% of the revenue. So yes, that margin is, as I said. Moving forward to page 2, we've got, this is one of our capital projects that's going forth. This is one of the pump stations on Power Avenue. It was built in the mid 80s. We do have the new pumps in place, which is down there on 2. And number 3 is part of the control panel for it. That's just the inside guts of it. Gives you an idea of how much technology is actually employed in just literally pumping, shit. But it's what we do. And this pump station is actually online now. It has been since last Monday. So it does have some control work to be completed, some telemetry work to be completed, some generator work to be completed, but it is operational, probably about, it's as good, if not better than what was there before, for sure. Mill Street, which is the sister pump station to this, we were going to push that off for a couple months. We have the pumps on hand on site, but with the winter, it's just doing bypass pumping is too complex. So that'll be in the spring. As far as the CDBG grant, we do have an existing $750,000 community development block grant for stormwater separation down on Front Street. That is about half of what we need. We did intend to apply for supplemental funding from numerous sources during the 2020 CFA round. Of course, that did not happen. So, we'll probably be seeking an extension from OCR. Next page. Moving on to water. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's the 2 control panels in the pump station. One for the generator and one for the input. You go to the next page. The water plant, although it looks and seems pretty new, is actually 15 years old. So this is the chlorine analyzer. The one on the left is the old one. The one on the right is the new one. What this does is it monitors every second of the day the chlorine residual that's coming from the plant going into the finished water tank. If there are any kind of tolerance limits with it, it triggers an immediate shutdown and alarm from the plant. So, that's just been upgraded technology. That was in the 2021 water fund. And just so that for many of you don't understand, sewer department has its own fund. That's part of your water and sewer bills. Water department has its own fund. And so they're self-funded. There's zero taxpayer money from property taxes or lodging taxes or any of that goes into the water or sewer funds. Moving on with water, if you want to go down to 5, sure. No, this is just a water break that was on Harry Howard Avenue. If it may be tough to see, but on picture 8, with those little dog ears, that was the pipe of the future that was put in the 40s, and it turns out it's pretty crappy. The bolts have rotted. They actually come apart at the seam. So when it needs to be replaced, it leaks. We actually have to cut a section out, put a new section in with a couple of those in picture 9, those high max couplings. Because we can't pull it tighter because we'll just pull the ends out on either end of the pipe. So it's supposed to be a good idea at the time, but turned out to be not so much. Moving on to water break. Just so you're aware, we have submitted contract documents to the Department of Health's review for the lead service line replacement project. That was a grant that we received a year and a half ago. We did lose some time during the COVID last year with everybody working remotely and shutdowns and partial shutdowns. So anyway, Department of Health is reviewing our contract documents as well as all the public documents that'll be sent out in the next billing. The WIA project, which is a water infrastructure improvement grant, that is for the 500 block of Washington Street. We've been working with EFC, which is the financing entity, and we believe we're on their schedule, so we'll be ready for financing and construction of that project this year. And that's to replace an old 4-inch main with a new 12-inch water main and bring 12-inch from the center of the city out to the boulevards. So just increase their flow. Moving to DPW, this is, no, you go back. So this is up by the emergency room to the hospital. This was supposed to be the locations of one of the those flashing crosswalks, and it came in as a clear ticket when we called it in. Turns out Verizon has not only 300 pair copper, but also a fiber optic line there. And so if you saw that little tent parked out there for about 3 weeks, that was Verizon repairing, because we put the part of the bucket through it, but they called it in clear, so we were free to excavate. Probably cost them about 100 grand. So anyway, we can't put one of those there. You can see the retaining wall on the right. There's a sidewalk, and then there's just a tiny bit of curbing, of which all the fiber optic and the phone is there. So we'll need to seek another location for that set of RFPs. While we're on the subject, next page of yeah. So these are just kind of what goes into it. The top left, those are the rebar mesh that go into the sonotubes. It ties into the panel boxes are on the right, top right. That's where all the control units go. Bottom right, those are the actual RFBs with their wiring harnesses. And bottom left is actually one that's been installed with the solar panel in the base. And so we assembled them in the garage in advance. While those were being done, next page, we also, yeah, that one there. There also was field work to be done. So top left is excavation of the site. Bottom right, or demolition of the sidewalk in the area. Bottom right is excavating for the sonotube. The bottom left is the rebar mesh, and then the sonotube went over that. It was filled up with concrete, and then 28 days later, we mounted the light. So you can see those are in place at 325. Next. Just, I like to stress that our equipment is big, and so are the components. So people see, maintenance of equipment budget for, $70,000, like, oh my God, why do they have that much? Well, because you're talking about a couple $1,000s worth of components right here, just for the brakes and the large trucks. Replacement value of a truck is about $175,000. These are the workhorses during snow and also during excavation. So just to give you a little bit there. The next one, just some more that when we weren't having snow every day, just seasonal work, refurbishing some picnic tables, working on some no parking signs. We did have an auction in, I believe it was in October or November of last year. That was surplus DPW equipment and various fire hoses and things like that. Did raise $15,000. The 2020 budget for auction was 0, so that's 15,000 to the good. Obviously nowhere near the shortfall, but it does contribute. Just some updates on the Ferry Street Bridge. We have issued documents to 2 of the adjacent property owners for easements. That's the Hudson Terrace and the New York Franklin Park there, the New York owned by Parks and Rec. We need a little bit of each one of their lands. One is like $500, the other one I think is $2,500. But that's typical with these DOT projects. And also the structural design report has been submitted to DOT. So, we continue to move forward with that project. The TEP Dugway project, which is the reconstruction of the bike path between Harry Howard and Mill Street. And that involves some work on Front Street. So it is ready to go, but we're waiting for the Complete Streets people to kind of get their idea of what they want Front Street to look like. So that way we don't spend money on one project doing something down there and then have another project spend money to undo it or do something differently. So that's just where we are right now. Just, let's see, next page. So we're going to move on to, this was not this past storm, this was Gale back in December. You can see snow removal in the middle of the night, and that's when we do it because there's no cars or traffic around. We can drive down the streets and we're not in anybody's way. We're not bothering anybody. We just move along. 24 shows this snow blower loading into the back of the trucks. So, what we do is you can see the snow on the curbs. And that's where this blower goes along that. The snow blower is actually 8 feet wide. So it gives you an idea of how big that snowbank is. It fills up almost the entire chute. So, you get a heavy snowstorm with 16 inches and a lot's got to get moved. If you go to the next one. Yeah, just, so, the top one is Warren Street, alternate side parking, everybody complied, thank you very much. And so the cars are all over to one side. We were able to push back the snowbanks to the other side. The bottom picture is 8th Street, which is just a cluster. There's no alternate side parking there. So you can see cars are buried. There's nowhere for anybody to go. There's, these huge piles and, there's no way that maybe emergency vehicles can get through there, but it's going to be a squeeze. So, that just kind of shows you what it looks like without alternate side parking. We also, next page, I guess. This is Warren Street, and it shows you the kind of the edge as the snow blower goes up the street. And that snow is actually on the sidewalk. We push against the curb, so that's what the property owners left when they had their shovel their sidewalks. 29 is just another picture showing the alternate side of, there's a windrow one side and the other's back to the curb. Let's see, next page is, this is just an idea of when they shovel to the curb. So you can see Vasilo's, he does a pretty good job. So there's a huge snowbank that was out in front of him, but once we cleared it to the curb, it was just a minor little thing. So there's, we prefer that everybody just kind of put it on the street when they first are shoveling, because we'll take it away with the snow blower rather than have us go by, do the removal, and then go kick whatever left over out into the street. It's just it's not a nice thing to do, and it makes a mess. We do have next page. So just part of it is, well, picture 31. We had a shortage of tow trucks during that one snow removal. So this kind of shows you what happens if cars were parked when we did snow removal. We can't get to the curb. So then the next day, the cars are all parked halfway out in the street. So that's why we need the alternate side. Various equipment. There's a loader on top left. That's Greenport coming in to assist us with cleanup at Bailey and Jenkins. Bottom left is skid steer from the cemetery, working on around some of the municipal parks. And we're doing some intersections with skid steer from the water department in the bottom right. Okay, and next. So this was submitted to the county. They asked us for FEMA numbers. What it was, we have to pick the top 48 hours of the event. So for us, it was a Saturday and Sunday when everybody was on overtime. There's a cost in there for private haulers. We also charge, we get an hourly reimbursement for each of the equipment, the dump trucks, the backhoes, the loaders, snow blowers. And so they all go into a formula. So when I tabulate everything out, it looks like about $58,000. If typically what happens, if we get that money, it'll be 2 years from now, and it'll be 75% of that. But if they're going to offer us money for doing what we have to do anyway, then so be it. So that's what has been submitted to the county. There's a lot of regulatory hoops that have to go at the state and county and federal level. So who knows? This may not be anything. It might be something. Next picture. So this is just from address the street sweeping question that seems to be burning everybody's mind. So the top picture is, this catch basin is actually behind a utility pole, so the sweeper can't get to it. It's easy to see that it gets clogged up pretty easily. And there's probably an inch or so of debris. When that's clogged up, the water is just going to go over top of it, and it's just going to continue on the street and go increase the flow somewhere else where it should already be in a pipe. The bottom picture each one of those little groundhog molehills is actually one day of street sweeping. So it's easy to see, and it's dirt. It's not. I mean, there are certainly candy wrappers and things like that in there, but by and large, it is dirt. It is grit. And if that stuff makes its way into the catch basins, it clogs them up. If it makes its way into the manholes, it clogs them up. And if it makes its way into, we can clean the catch basins out of those 250 of them. The manholes, there's another couple hundred of those. But if it settles inside the pipe, we have no mechanism to get down there. It's 20 some odd miles of pipe. So the easiest way is to just grab it with the sweeper once a day, and then we can pull it out. So what I have next. So, this isn't just Rob Perry saying this stuff. It's not Rob Perry making this up. This document, the full document is on the DPW website. It's called the consent decree from the Environmental Protection Agency. That is the United States EPA, not the corner store EPA. And that is they dictate this to us. We didn't ask them. They didn't ask my opinion. They didn't say, hey, Rob Perry, what do you think about it? They just said, you're required to keep the sewer system as clean as possible of debris. And we can't get the debris inside the pipes, and we can't get the grit out. The only way we can get it is if we catch it before it enters the system, and that is along the curbs. So that's the documents from the EPA. There's also documents, you can go get our Speedies permit, it's online. In our best management practices, number 2 of the permit, the EC. Regular cleaning of the streets and combined sewers is an important part of proper operation and maintenance of the combined sewer system. So again, these are the regulatory bodies that are telling us that we have to clean street sweeps. And you want to go to the next page? For those that believe that nobody else has alternate side parking, there are sections of code from Poughkeepsie, Kingston, Albany, and Troy. One of the other things that I suggest, if you're going to pursue this discussion, is that you talk to the fire department and you ask them about July 27th of 2019, when there was a working fire down at the lower end of Union Street, and the tower truck, which is designed to go on top of the building to shoot down into it, was unable to be used because the outriggers couldn't go out. Why couldn't the outriggers go out? Because it was during that grace period on the weekends in the summertime, when the mayor suspended alternate side parking and cars were on both sides, so there was no space for the truck to set up. And you've got some of the oldest buildings in the city, most historic, and they all share common walls. And you had $1.5 million piece of equipment that was useless. So you should talk to the fire department too. And that's just, so that's just the basics of it. It's just in the wintertime, it's about, keeping the cars on one side so that way we don't have to declare a snow emergency. Just, remember that alternate side parking is certainly something of an inconvenience at the nighttime, but during the daytime, people can park wherever. If you have to declare a snow emergency, that's a 24 hours a day impact. It means you can't park on one side of the street, even in the middle of broad daylight. And it creates quite a flurry, and it creates lots of issues. So that's the short of it. We certainly can go into, I would say, if you want to have the special meeting about this, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Rob. I'm sure we're going to have questions. I know that Rebecca Wolf would like to ask a question.
Hi, Rob. I was just curious where those piles of dirt that come from the street sweeping, where did they, where are they? Like,
We
where
dump them behind St. Mary's.
behind St. Mary's?
Yep.
In just is that in the parking lot, or that's?
No, there's basically a dump. It's where we put clay from our excavations when we do dig. It's just.
Okay.
Yep.
Council members, questions for Rob? I don't.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, Jane. Go ahead, Jane.
So can you kind of enlighten us as to like what the street cleaning schedule is? you know?
It's
how-
5 days a week. So from Monday to Friday, what happens is the guys come in at 3 o'clock in the morning and they street sweep from 3 till 6 o'clock. And then they transition to their regular shift,
Okay, so they do that
5 days a
Monday
week.
morning to Friday mornings.
Yes,
So they don't sweep at any time of the year on the weekends.
that is correct. But, now looking at and having this discussion, I'm thinking that maybe we should.
Well, snow is a different.
Well, we don't do it in the wintertime. The snow removal, snow is different in the wintertime. But I'm just saying, in the summertime, we should probably start street sweeping 7 days a week, because you see how big those piles are. And every time we don't catch a ton or so, it settles out. It it decreases the capacity and basically generates more, creates more CSOs,
Okay.
which is what we don't want.
So I just sorry to keep, kind of knocking on this, but you got your crew literally covers every curb in town, the north-south streets, the east-west streets. All of them.
There's different routes, but most of with the grid, because that's the oldest portion of the city, which would be, the crosstowns and Union now. That stuff is every day. Then we go out to the boulevards, Glenwood, Parkwood. They get done like once a week, but they also don't have a combined system out there either. They have there are newer portions of the city, so they have separate storm lines. So if grit and debris get into the catch basins out on Parkwood, they just, they don't get mixed in with the sewer system.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Any other council members have questions? And I remind you that we're gonna, you have requested that this be one of our committees, and so you'll have more chance to talk about this with Rob, which I'm sure he's looking forward to. Dewan.
Hi, Rob. I have a question. You mentioned you got to pay for the dump truck and other stuff when you clean snow, but isn't that city owned?
No. We use all of our dump trucks, but our dump trucks are small. They only carry about 8 yards of material. We bring in contractors with triaxles that can carry 3 to 4 times the volume of our trucks. And that's where you keep them in a line. So that one truck gets filled up, there's always trucks there to keep the blower going.
I hear. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dewan. Any other council members?
Yeah, I want to just throw in one more thing. Rob, your guys did a great job with all this snow.
Well, thank you. I'll pass that on to them.
Yeah, please. It was exemplary. And I've seen the Congo line of dump trucks following the snow thrower thing, and it's quite a ballet. It's impressive to watch.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, any questions from the public?
Nope. Okay, sorry, gotta go.
Wait a second. I heard 2 people. Somebody raised
I
their
had
hand.
a question.
Oh, okay, Tiffany. Go ahead,
Yes.
Tiffany.
Rob, and with the weather and everything that's been going on, have your crew been able to poop for the dogs?
I don't know. I don't have that level of detail of discussion with the crew as to dog poop. I don't know. Sorry.
What was that question exactly? I didn't quite understand it. Tiffany?
The dog stands with the bags, Tom, that the city owns, and
Oh,
DPW fills them up with the bags for poop
Got
for dogs.
Yeah, I
I
think they
was
still fill them
wondering,
up.
were they able to refill those stands?
I believe they are. But I can ask tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Rob.
Sure.
And the public. Bill Houston.
Kelsey,
Yeah, hi.
please.
Rob, can you
Be
tell us
polite, Bill.
why? Can you tell us why Promenade Park, does the top level of Promenade Park doesn't get swept of at least some snow so that it doesn't turn into ice?
I believe it is shoveled up there, isn't it?
No, Rob, I've been complaining about it for 3 years and,
Oh.
and still doesn't do. And yesterday, I was not up there today. Yesterday, there's a path, if you will, to the fence that is packed snow because of all the visitors. That is ice. You
I guess
guys,
have to take a
go up
look
to the
at it.
top step and then you stop. Does that make any sense to you?
I don't know, Bill.
Bill,
Are you okay with that?
Bill, that's not the kind of question. You can ask questions, but you know,
Okay,
getting,
okay. My question is then, why are you clearing all the parks along Warren Street, all the trails and all the parks, including 7th Street, but you don't go all the way to the fence in Promenade?
Bill, thank you for the compliment that we're cleaning all those other parks. I didn't think you noticed.
And your answer to my question, why you aren't doing Promenade as well, is?
I don't know that we aren't. I'll have to take your word for it.
Well, okay, so is it going to change, Rob? You're going to
well,
talk to
he'll
your
look
guys in the
into it,
morning?
Bill. Next
What-
question.
Is it
Next
acceptable to
question.
you, Rob, that they're not touching the snow at the top? I just want to know. Is it
Now, whether
acceptable?
it's acceptable or not, it's really not an appropriate question.
I'm not talking to you.
Well, but I'm running the meeting, Bill, I'm sorry to say, and you've just muted yourself. So I guess you don't want to ask a question anymore. So John Kane, you're up.
Yeah, quick question for you, Rob. Did DPW ever take care of mowing the lawn at Oakdale in the past?
No, the youth department had their own personnel for that.
You know about how many hours that would take DPW to do?
How many hours to do?
Yeah, how much time would it take to mow that grass?
I don't know. And what are we not going to do? Are we going to stop mowing parks, maybe?
No. I'm actually just curious how long you think it takes to mow that. This is not a question about DPW, just in your estimation.
I would say to mow and weed whack that property, or you got to be talking at least. It's going to be a better part of a day for sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Doesn't seem to be any more questions. We can finally move on to the very patient Chief Moore, you're there.
The best for last. Take it away.
Exactly. You got to unmute yourself, Chief. Chief, you're not unmuted.
There we go.
There you go.
Rob stole my thunder with his pictures of sewer lines and brake linings. It's going to be hard to follow. I'm sorry, Mr. President. Go ahead.
Nope, you're on, Chief.
Okay, well, hello from the police department. Everything's going swimmingly over here. It's not a surprise to say everybody's pretty much aware that the focus of the police department has been the Police Reform Act put forward by the governor and trying to meet the deadline of April 1. It's pretty regimented as to what we have to do, and the penalties are severe if the policies and the new ideas aren't put on paper and submitted to the state by April 1. The governor has said that the city could jeopardize state and even federal funding in the future. Worst case scenario, the state would assign a monitor for the police department to push through the police reform. So it's very important that we get this done by the April 1st deadline. So we've made that pretty much a priority. The mayor's committee, Accountability and Reconciliation Committee, is going to take a large chunk of our responsibility away, or not away, but also contribute to that deadline, getting it done in time. And they've made very good progress. The whole reform started off with the planning phase and then a listening and learning stage. They've drafted a plan for police reform, and it has to be ratified in March for the April 1 deadline. So I'm pretty positive that we will get it done, that Hudson will meet its obligation, and we won't have to suffer any of the consequences. So I'm very, very optimistic about that. As far as the department reports go, for the month, we do the mandatory required reports for use of force. So last month we had no use of force incidences. We made 38 assorted arrests, and we had 8 calls for emotionally disturbed people. The most significant arrest of the 38, we had a felony possession of a weapon, I believe a knife, and a criminal mischief felony. The other mandates from the mayor's office for body camera review is still being done and submitted, being reviewed and submitted. So everything seems to be pretty much on course over here. And that's all I have for a report. No pictures to show you.
Council members, any questions for the chief? Rebecca Wolf.
Hi. I heard on the radio, I think yesterday, that some elected officials in, I think, Ulster County or maybe Orange County have been requesting like a extension of that deadline for the reforms, based on what I understood from what I heard on the radio, was based on kind of a need for more involvement, more of a like a what they were talking about as a more sort of significant involvement from basically people outside of the power structure that has defined, you know, that has already been defining like police department functioning. And I'm just curious if you could speak to that at all. I mean, if you feel as though the process could benefit from additional time to include more community voices, like in a more meaningful way. Basically, that's what I'm curious to know, if you feel, how you feel.
Hi, Rebecca. The governor is a rather forceful person, and I listened to the press conference, I think it was Friday or Saturday, and he didn't sound like there were going to be, there actually was some legislation put into extended, I think, to September, October, to extend the implementation. But the governor didn't seem very happy about that. The one thing is, the thing that we submit in April is can be reviewed and sent back, I think, for more community involvement. It has to meet the state's satisfaction that enough people have been included. So I don't really have an opinion on it. I think everybody's going to have to be satisfied that they had enough input, and also have to look at what the reforms are, what the new policies are, and see if they're satisfied.
Councilmen and women, any questions? I don't see any hands up. So I will go to the public. Are there any questions from the public?
Have you been receiving? I'm sorry.
Tiffany? Oh, there you go. No?
Excuse me if you said this already, but have you been receiving more calls of violence since the pandemic?
Tiffany, you still there?
You cut yourself off, Tiffany.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this.
You didn't hear me?
No.
Oh, you want to know about the crime trends, correct, Tiffany?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen like cases?
Keeps muting herself by mistake, I think.
I think I know what she's getting at. Look,
during the pandemic.
I said, have you seen cases rise during the pandemic, or has it been less?
Absolutely less. Our calls for service are down from 2019 to 2020. our arrests are down nearly 37%. And now we have to, it's been trending down over the years, but not at that rate. So I think it's pretty safe to say that what contributes to that added trending down has to be the COVID situation. I mean, we'll look at it, later, look at all the specific figures later. Domestic violence seems to stay fairly steady, but I would think that the correlation is definitely there, Tiffany.
Thank you, Chief. If no more questions from the council, there are hands up. Aaliyah Schneider.
Hi, I was wondering if there was an update regarding the resolution for having the gender and race data.
I'll address that, Aaliyah. There were some problems with the actual resolution, and we're working on an amended version as we speak. The chief and the union were very concerned about it. They pointed out some of the problems, and we hope to have a revised version by the formal meeting next week. Does that answer the question? Hello?
Yes, thank you.
I hope I didn't preempt you there, Chief. That was.
No, I agree. Just we're not absolutely not against the reporting. It's just figuring out how to do it.
Right.
That's all. We've always reported on traffic violations and race using a sample of tickets. So now we'll figure out how to make this resolution work.
Thank you, Chief. John Kane has a question.
Thank you, Tom. And Chief Moore, I just have a quick question. I noticed that an HPD officer had revived someone using Narcan, was in the news recently. I know that there has been an uptick in relapses for opioid users since the COVID pandemic began. I've also seen that there have been, a number of fentanyl busts in and around Hudson over the last year. Has there also been an uptick of overdoses caused by fentanyl? And do you feel like the police have the tools that they need to let people know when they are aware that there is, a bad batch out there somewhere, to let the public know, hey, if you're using, maybe you need to be more aware. This is like not a good time.
Right. We have spike alerts. They've been hitting mostly in counties around us. Fortunately for us, we've kind of bucked the trend, John, a little bit, in that our overdose statistics have been fairly flat. In fact, I dare I say it's been a little under of recent months. The guys are well equipped with Narcan. Unfortunately, they're well practiced at it. I probably had one today earlier. But we wanted to give a nod to our newest officer who did a great job. But the answer to your question is, we're equipped. If we get a specific information about a particular batch of heroin with fentanyl, we'll definitely get it out on social media and try to make the public aware.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Tiffany Garriga has another question. Tiffany?
Yeah, I have two questions. One question is can you hear me?
Yes.
One question is the what is it called? The mobile crisis, the mental health. Is that being utilized? Do you know?
Yes, MCAT. We do utilize MCAT, Tiffany.
And also, could you send each of the council members the number of calls that come out, understanding of what to do and how we represent and the resources we can provide?
Okay, so the statistics for the numbers called, Tiffany, and then what else? I didn't quite understand.
You answered my first question. So the statistic question was for each. Could you please give us the number of calls, I guess through email, the number of calls that comes out per ward, so we can have a better understanding of what's going on within our wards, so we can better assist our constituents?
We'll try to generate that report by ward. You'll definitely get the statistical report. It's easy. I can email that to everyone on the council. I'll have to check and see if we can
break it down,
sort it. Yeah, it's a special report. I'll see if we can do it. Obviously, we will.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Bill Houston has two important questions.
Okay.
Hi there, Chief. How are you?
Good, Bill.
Great. First question is, I'm wondering about how your officers go about writing tickets for speeders in town, cars that are going over 30 miles an hour. Do you give a leeway like on the highways where 55 miles an hour is the speed limit? Cops usually give us like a leeway of 5 or 8 miles an hour before they give a ticket. How do you approach it in town? And in addition, do you guys have to have a radar gun to write a ticket to somebody who's obviously speeding?
Yeah, our guys are certified in radar and they use them, Bill. There's no policy on what speed is the minimum speed or before a ticket is written. Technically, we could write a ticket for 31 and a 30, but I doubt many of those are ever written.
So what's your sense? Is it like more like 35 you guys are giving out tickets, or?
Bill, I think the question's asked and answered. Let's go to the second question, please.
Boy, Tom. Geez.
No, you beat.
My second question has to do with parking meters. The treasurer brought up the fact that meter revenue is pretty important. I'm curious, when a meter or a pair of meters goes missing, as happens occasionally, right? About how long is the turnaround for those meters to be replaced and in use?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I don't know how long the average turnaround is for a broken meter. A lot of times it's just maintenance.
Not a broken meter, but an actual missing meter.
I don't know. I suppose they would have to be purchased and replaced. I don't know what the turnaround is on that, Bill. I really don't. I'm more familiar with, usually, they have batteries in them and they're replaced and we have the guy that goes around and does the maintenance. But as far as one that's been lopped off or removed, I don't know how long before they purchase one and reinstall it.
They being who?
The city. It would have to, I think it would be Stanley would be the one to have to acquire one and put it in place. I think they just had 4 removed from the Sam's lot to make room for youth department parking. So that becomes 4 available meters to put elsewhere if the inventory is low.
But I'm just trying to get a sense, because you're the head of the department that handles the parking meters, and you're saying they, but I'm just wondering if you as their boss has an understanding of, like, is it going to be months or years before a meter gets replaced? Because I know of 2 that are missing in town and have been for several months.
Well, I think to do is probably to do an inventory of the missing meters and see how many meters we have now in our inventory, then have them put out. I think that we'll get Stan Rucky to do that, and we'll see how many we're talking about. If it's more than 2 or more than 10, I'm not sure.
So you're not, but last question is, you're not aware of any missing right now?
Oh yeah, I've seen missing ones, and I know that we have 4 extra ones now. So I'll see if Stanley can get involved with DPW and replace them or put them in the spots that don't have them.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
So,
no, that was 3 questions. That's plenty. You can always follow up with emails, as you know. Moving right along. Let's see, we're going to have a presentation from the Galvin Foundation in a minute, but I just want to get a little business in here that needs to be done. Hold on one second if I can find my notes. about the ad hoc committees. What I've done is I've scheduled them for times when we already in the past had committee times. So there's nothing new time-wise for the 4 that we're gonna address right away. So if I mention you, please write it down. I'll follow up with an email. The first committee, which is about sidewalks, a number of you have responded that you'd like to be involved. John, Dominic, Eileen, Tiffany, Dewan, and Calvin. And that'll be Tuesday, the 16th at 5:30. The second ad hoc committee is about parking. And Jane, Malachi, and Dewan volunteered for that. And that will be Thursday, the 18th at 6 p.m. And
Tom, sorry, can you
Yes.
add me to that one? I'm sorry, I missed
one?
that. The parking one?
Sure.
Thanks.
And I will also contact, whoever, I'm sure Rob will be really looking forward to that meeting, so I'll contact him as well. The third ad hoc committee is about selling buildings, and that's Jane, Rebecca, and Dominic. And that is Wednesday, the 24th at 5 p.m., followed by the solar farm ad hoc committee, and that's John, Dewan, and Calvin at 6:15. Okay, well, I'll send you all that in an email. I just wanted for others to know that that's how we're proceeding. Next up, and I'm before you start complaining, because we are into the third hour, just remember our planning board averages a 3-hour meeting and they don't get paid anything. So moving right along, we're going to evaluate this too, by the way. And I want to hear not just from council members, but also from the public. I think this is obviously a better way of going about things, but we'll leave that up to everyone else. In the meantime, the Galvin Foundation is here. They have a presentation. They'll probably want to share the screen. Shaheem? Oh, sorry, and Calvin. Thanks for reminding me, Calvin. You go into the waiting room. Shaheem, put Calvin in the waiting room, please. I had a note for that right here, and I didn't even pay attention to it. We have, for this presentation, Dan Kent, Walter Chatham, their attorney, Dan Hubble. And before they start, let me just make one thing clear right off the bat. What you may have read about a land swap is no longer part of the equation. It's absolutely off the table. So that being said, also understand that only 50% of this design has been done. It's nothing like, the interior, all that can be changed further along. So having said all that, let me hand it over to Dan Kent.
Hi, Tom and everyone. Before I get started, I just wanted to note there's a profane and offensive name in the participant list right now. I don't know if someone has the
Hold on.
authority.
I already got rid of one, so let me see if that one's still there. Okay, let's
And while you're doing that, if I could share my screen, that would be great. Sure thing. Thanks for staying on.
Okay, cool. I didn't even see it.
Good. Let's see. Can I share my screen? Okay, wonderful. We'll just play from the start. Does that look clear, everyone?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you for having me join you at the end of a long meeting here. I'm here to share an offer from the Galvin Foundation to help facilitate the creation of a new city hall at 400 State Street. So I'll just do a quick overview of what we're suggesting and some of the benefits of this proposal. Here's a summary of them. This would be a city hall building that is 100% ADA compliant. It's accessible. Every floor, every room would be accessible for people with mobility issues. It's in a central location. Everyone knows the building at 400 State Street, the home of the former home of the Hudson Area Library. It's very conveniently located for people who, whether they're driving or walking through the city of Hudson. It's in a historically significant building, the Hudson Alms House, built back in 1818. And we also think it's an affordable project to build, in part because we are offering to donate a $1.4 million construction grant, along with up to $100,000 for planning to help make this project possible. And then a final benefit is that we had Walter do an analysis for us of how the current city hall office spaces could fit into this building. And what we've found is that it could fit all of the different city municipal functions into one space, which would be convenient for folks looking to use government services. So to start, the building would be accessible for all. As I'm sure all of you and many in the community know, the city is currently subject to a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice. And it's quite clear in the goal to create city office spaces that are ADA accessible. And this proposal does just that. It creates accessible spaces throughout the entire building and would ensure compliance on an ongoing basis with that particular issue in the settlement agreement. Next, as I mentioned, it's in a central location. It's just 2 blocks away, at least, from every single ward in the city of Hudson. So that's easy if you're driving to City Hall, it's easy if you're walking. Next, it's a historically significant building. And one reason we're really excited about the idea of turning 400 State Street into a city hall is that over this building's 200-year history, it has served a wide range of different civic and public functions. We're all familiar that it was the home of the Hudson Area Library before that moved over to the Galvin Armory. It also used to be low-income housing, housing for elderly residents, housing for people living with mental illness, and even an orphanage. And being the city hall, I think, is just a kind of culmination and another important civic use for this very beautiful and significant building. So we also think this could be affordable to build. Now, there's still analysis yet to be done, and at the end, I'll talk about how we envision this relationship working with the city of Hudson. But just to get a sense of what's possible here, we had Walter produce 50% construction drawings, and we had R.L. Baxter Construction, which is a general contractor down in Poughkeepsie that does work throughout the Hudson Valley. They produced some cost estimates for us, talking with a lot of the subcontractors that they work with. And they came up with a total construction cost of about $3.3 million. And that includes a $500,000 MEP upgrade allowance and a code upgrade allowance for some items to give a little flexibility depending on what the city's preferences are for the mechanical and electrical and plumbing system. So we also think this could be affordable to finance for one obvious reason, that we are offering to donate ownership of the building to the city, and we're offering to give the city $1.4 million to build this space out. We also wanted to think about what the other sources could be for the city of Hudson if you were to try to come up with that $3.3 million with a goal of minimizing the amount of debt service. And hearing Heather, the treasurer's presentation earlier, I know that's a major priority for the city, especially now. So we looked at potential sources, and with $1.4 million from Galvin Foundation and a $500,000 loan from USDA, they have a program that is specially tailored for supporting city hall projects in rural communities, which Hudson qualifies for. And also through the sale of 429 Warren and 520 Warren, which of course would no longer be needed if all of those offices were to move into 400 State. Based on the assessed value of those two properties, that's how we get to a $3.3 million budget. Of course, if we were to decide to go forward, it's up to the city how it wants to finance this. We just wanted to provide, one potential concept of how that could work. In any case, it seems that the USDA Community Facilities Loan Program is a really great source to look at. Their interest rates are at all-time lows right now. It would be a 2.125% interest rate. So if we're assuming a $500,000 loan, that would be an annual debt service payment of $23,707. By comparison, the city pays $262,000 in annual debt service for the police and court building. So this is less than a tenth of what's currently being paid for that building. And on top of that, you'd be able to potentially bring 429 Warren and 520 Warren back onto the tax rolls. So that additional tax revenue would cover a pretty good chunk of that the debt service on that $500,000 loan. So now I'm going to turn it over to Walter, but I just wanted to start by framing this and saying what we're presenting is primarily a study. So if you see, for instance, on this side, the treasurer having 300 square feet in one particular room, this is just our own kind of suggestion as to how all of the different puzzle pieces could fit together. It would be up to the city to decide how to allocate space throughout the building. The one thing that these construction drawings achieve is it gets us to the point where you could start to get some pretty firm pricing for the project, but it also suggests how to address the need for an elevator and additional restrooms by creating an additional kind of annex building in the rear of 400 State. So I just wanted to offer that preview. You know, Walter will walk through each of the floors and what we're suggesting, but just bear in mind the way in which the space is allocated, that is totally up to the city's discretion. And we're just making a suggestion here as to how the current uses could be accommodated. So at that, I'll turn it over to Walter, and Walter, let me know, do you want me to switch floors?
Okay, I don't know. I don't think anybody can see my cursor. Should I share my screen so that I can move around, or do you want to just point to
How
stuff?
about
You could
I'll
be my
follow
Vanna
your
White
lead,
with your
Walter.
cursor.
Yeah.
How's that? Okay, great. So, you know, what we did was we reasoned this old building. A number of people had suggested it was very expensive to renovate. And the reason for that is the old building cannot take modern plumbing and mechanical systems the way that modern construction can. So our proposal is to build an annex building that includes the principal exits, the bathrooms, and the elevator back behind the L-shaped existing building, and to connect that with two, I'll call them sky bridges to be romantic, nice glass bridges that plug into the old building. So other than a break room up on the second floor, we would have no, and the mayor's got a little bathroom, there'd be no plumbing in the actual old building, very minimal mechanical. So the idea would be that we would not need to destroy the building in order to occupy it. That has two major advantages. One, it preserves a major asset in Hudson's historical inventory of gorgeous buildings. The other is you don't have to rip out the whole interior and put it back again at great expense. We believe the building can be structurally reinforced and secured. It's already been cleaned out. And so you take this ability to kind of come in at the back and park and come up a ramp. You come into what is essentially the service entry, but it's also the main entrance, the public entrance. And you can go there directly forward to pay your parking ticket, or go to the clerk's office, your treasurer, anything you're required to do business. Or if you walk, you can come in the front door, just like you would have 100 years ago. And moving upstairs, because we got to keep it going quickly, we would put the meeting rooms upstairs. I'm sorry, maybe I'm going too fast. I assume
Oh, no.
everybody can. I don't think I have to read everything at this point in the evening. So basically, if you walk in, it's downstairs. If you want to have a meeting, a public event, or meet with an important official, you go upstairs. So the Common Council and the mayor are on the second floor. And again, you know, bathrooms, a break room, nice windows. Everybody's got nice windows. And we hope to do a mechanical system that doesn't utilize a lot of ducts. It uses point systems, you know, split systems, so that the invasiveness into the building would be minimal. And again, hopefully the beautiful building is preserved. And then topping it all off, we have the code code enforcement office upstairs, the brain, with windows overlooking the entire city, all directions. The code officer can scan everything. And, we seriously think this is a nice way to bring the whole city government under one roof and make it efficient. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Walter.
Thanks, Walter. So to wrap this up, I will share what we are offering as Galvin as support and what the potential next steps could look like here. So we've produced these drawings and we're continuing to advance them. We've produced the phase 1 environmental site assessment as well as an asbestos abatement report. We will donate all of those things to the city for the city's use. We are also offering to provide up to $100,000 to support project planning and evaluation. So what does that mean? That means if the city decides to move forward, the city would then want to, maybe hire its own architect to do an additional review of the drawings. Maybe they would hire a construction manager to help get bids in accordance with Wick's law to get a firm sense of what the pricing looks like. The city would be able to hire whatever consultants it needs to assemble the financing and to get pricing and to ultimately decide whether or not the city wants to move forward with this opportunity. Basically, you would be submitting proposals, invoices to us, and we would be paying them up to $100,000 to help you do all of that kind of work to decide whether or not you want to move forward. If you get the bids and you decide this is what you want and you want to move forward, as soon as you close on that construction financing, the construction loan, that's when we would be donating $1.4 million and the ownership of the building to the city. So it would be at that point, once you've gotten all the pricing, once you've gotten the financing together, you would get to decide whether or not you want to go ahead with this or not. And if you do, we would be there with $1.4 million and the donation of this building to the city. So that is what we're offering. We hope this is helpful or interesting, and I'll look forward to hearing any questions or ideas from members of the Common Council.
Questions, council members?
I have something. So we had an architect and a consultant do work coming up with I think there were 3 or 4 different proposals for our current city hall location. And I think the high end cost for renovating our existing building was around $4 million. And we have a low end cost, I think that was around $400,000 to just get us teams into under the ADA, the consent requirement from the Justice Department.
John,
so I think some of my, hold on, Tom. I think some of my, well, you
it's not quite accurate, but okay.
Well, fine, then correct it when I'm done, please. My main concern here is that I think the cost that you guys are presenting, since they're 50% complete drawings, the 3 million plus that you have seems to be, I think that'll be the low end estimate for this. So I think that what we'll be getting is actually probably something much more expensive than the high end estimate for our renovation at City Hall. Not to say that this is a terrible idea, but I think, we need a lot more planning on our end to know how much we actually need. If we need a building as large as the old Alms House or not, remains to be seen. And I still think we'll be taking on debt beyond what you're proposing here. So those are my concerns.
Well, I mean, if from our end, it is up to the city. If you want to accept our offer to fund the process of getting firm pricing and answers to those questions, then, we'd be happy to support that process. And we think there are certain advantages. From my understanding, the around, and Tom, correct me if the number's off here, the around 300,000 or 400,000 option that the city has for City Hall would just be putting a lift in at the front, and it wouldn't make the second floor ADA accessible. So if someone wanted to come in, they couldn't meet with Tom up in his office.
Yeah, correct. But I think my point was that we could do that sooner to sort of meet the immediate requirements that we have under the consent decree while we're trying to figure out what a larger plan would be. And granted that I do think that this proposal, as interesting as the drawings are, they're not fully complete. Our needs aren't fully known yet. And I do think that moving to a new building will be much more costly and it'll be an expensive renovation for the city to undertake. And it's quite a lot that I feel like we're rushing into right now.
We're not rushing because this isn't going to happen today or at our next
Well,
meeting.
but we have to meet the consent requirement demands.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
And we had it, but we had a year of that sitting on these drawings.
John, this is something that's been circulated a lot. We don't know that low cost one will actually satisfy the Department of Justice.
Well, those architects would have to be working there, then they would violate the terms of the RFP if they presented something that wasn't workable.
Which are, you mean the original architects?
We were presented with proposals that
Correct, but that wasn't, no, that was to their estimate. They're not qualified actually to be ADA architects. So it's not necessarily, I'm not saying it wouldn't satisfy DOJ, but it's not done until DOJ signs off on it. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
Jane.
Thanks, Tom. Dan, I have a question. Not clear on the condition of the building having to do with environmental concerns, things like asbestos, things like oil tanks, things like that kind of stuff. So I share John's concern that we could be taking on a project that that could turn out to be a lot pricier than these estimates, or maybe even more aggressive ones, would suggest. So my question is, if we went down, if we went down this path for a while and then decided that this was not in the city's best interests, would there be any? Are we able to? No, Tom.
What?
Are we able to withdraw? Are we able to sell the building in the future if we decide that if the city decides it's not in its best interest to proceed with this project?
So the first step of this process would be that we would be giving the city up to $100,000 for the city to get real construction bids,
right,
and assemble construction financing. If the city decided at that point that they wanted to go ahead with the project, and we're all sitting around a table and you're executing the loan documents with the bank to start that construction work, it is at that moment that we would be donating the building and the $1.4 million to the city. So the only scenario in which the building is donated to the city is if, after that planning process, you determine that the pricing is acceptable, that the terms of the financing are acceptable, that of course, in order to get the building permits and move forward, that the environmental remediation and studies and plans are all acceptable. So there would not, and Dan Hubble, please feel free to chime in here if I'm missing anything, there would not be a scenario where the city would get this huge price tag or see that there's this big environmental issue and then say, oh, now we have to deal with this building. Because the only scenario in which you receive the building is if you've decided to get a construction loan.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Just to jump in there, what Galvin envisions is that you would have the ability to review title, review environmental, obtain financing, do everything that you would need to do in order to move forward with the city project to develop the building as a city hall. And there'd be $100,000 reimbursement set up so that as you would incur those costs along the way, those costs would be reimbursed to you. If at any time that you would want to, the city would want to pull out, if you got construction bids back and you said this project is way too big, we don't want to take that on, you would be able to pull out at no penalty to the city whatsoever.
But once we're in, we're in.
Well, correct. Once you're in, but when you're in, it's you've done everything to tee the project up. So you've already gotten construction bids. You've already have a commitment for construction financing. You've done all the due diligence essentially that you would need to do to say to yourselves, we want to move forward with this project. So there's getting to that point, there would be, I'm not your counsel, Jeff Bakers, he could advise you better than me. But there would be a lot along the way where you would be looking at construction pricing, you'd be looking at financing, you'd be looking at all of these considerations, environmental, architectural, et cetera. And then only then, when you as the council felt comfortable with having all issues cleared, that you would move forward. And at that point, when you closed on the construction financing to do the project, at that point, that's when we would be deeding the property and the 1.4 and giving the $1.4 million to the city.
Okay, so it's all of a piece. Okay, thank you very much. It's very
Mhm.
clear. I appreciate the ultimate response.
John Rosenthal.
Just curious, considering that you guys have been in that building for so long, and I know it figures very large on your website, and I think at one point it was going to be the headquarters for Galvin, or it was at least talked about that in the community. Why didn't you guys move ahead with the renovation of the building? What stopped you from doing an aggressive renovation there, considering you've had it for so long?
I think it's just been a matter of our development pipeline and our priorities. We've had other projects. We've been working on affordable housing. We're finishing up a daycare center in the Armory right now. So part of it is just, we wanted to further these important community projects before taking care of our own offices.
And what about, even here would be, just spitballing a solution. What about just a donation for us to renovate our existing building? And then you guys hold on to the building that you have.
Well, I think for us, we believe 400 State Street is a significant building for the city of Hudson. And a big part of our mission is the promotion of historic preservation and bringing new life and community into buildings. So that's part of why we're coming with this. We think it's a great solution for the many reasons that I listed in our presentation.
Tom.
Who's that?
Dominic.
Dominic. Oh, you've been here. I didn't know you were there. Go ahead, Dominic.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan, for your presentation. Just a couple of questions. So do you have any access, or do you remember before you took over the building? I know, if I remember correctly, the library was going to do a renovation. Do you have any documentation on what that cost was going to be, or prior knowledge of what that initial cost was? And also, I know, Walter, you said something about the annex being at the back of the building, and I'm wondering, because we're talking about accessibility, that if I remember that this building only has eight parking spots close to the building, and I'm assuming that at least 3 of those parking spots are going to have to be handicap accessible. Where does the parking come into play? Because unless you're assuming that the private property behind whoever buys the school is going to allow us to park on their property, where does the parking come into play in terms of location to that annex?
I can answer the first question, Dominic. I've already asked Emily Chimides to look into that project when they were thinking of renovating the library. I think Dan's presentation pointed out some of the differences from that renovation to this renovation, but I'm definitely trying to get that information, and I will share it with all of us on the council when I get it. If anybody out there was on the library committee and has that proposal, please send it on, because we don't have access to that information immediately, but we'd love to know it. What kind of renovation it was. We can evaluate that. But Dan, you want to answer about the parking?
Yeah, regarding the second question, we haven't done a formal parking study yet. I know there's a city-owned lot right across the street from the building, and much of the parking behind the building is for John L. Edwards. But I would think we'd want to explore having some ADA spaces assigned around the perimeter of the building. Is there anything you can add to that, Walter? I think it's a very good question, Dominic.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting. My familiarity with that area started when I was on a committee that evaluated proposals for Edwards, and that's what actually generated this program that we've been working with. So I guess my answer would be there is, as with many areas of Hudson, right now an unbelievable surplus of existing surface parking. And I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about, Edwards has been empty for a long time now. And I think that somebody's going to have to figure out a way to stitch that lot, Edwards and a city hall proposal together into something that makes sense as a municipal center, because it is at the center of Hudson and it does have all the components, including looking like a city hall. So if you were able to somehow get additional parking eventually and bring other buildings into the fold, you could actually have a municipal center that functioned as such. So this would be a first step in that quest, in my opinion.
Okay, as I said earlier, this is very preliminary. I imagine we probably in the near future have a meeting dedicated just to this. But I will take, there is one comment or question from the public, and I'll take that now. Ron, would you like to?
Yes, I have a question and then a comment. Offhand, does anyone know how the dimensions of the council chamber in this proposal compare to the dimensions of the council chamber in the existing city hall?
Walter?
Yes, unfortunately, I don't have the plan of the existing city hall memorized. I can tell you that it is essentially the same square footage. The current council room is a square, and the one we're proposing, which we simply fitted into the existing main room of the library on the second floor, is a slight rectangle. So I'm going to stick my neck out and say they're roughly equivalent, but one is more of a directional space. The new space would be more directional, what they call a Latin versus a Greek cross.
Okay, and because I mean, I think that virtual meetings should continue even after the pandemic departs, which I hope is sooner rather than later. But I'm also concerned about the size of the meeting hall. I also want to make a comment is on the grounds of on aesthetic grounds. For those people in the past with the discussion of the relocation of City Hall who were in favor of staying in the current location, they wanted a building with an impressive facade and with a kind of approach. Well, the current City Hall doesn't really have an approach. This building does, and it's not only it's a terminal feature on 4th Street, because at the one end you have the library and on the other hand you have the courthouse. So if that's what the sort of thing that you want, then this would give you that. Also, in connection with, I mean, Mr. Chatham brought up JLE. I was wondering if in connection with this building, if City Hall is relocated there, use might be made of some parts of JLE also in connection with city offices. Again, allowing for financial considerations and the various other environmental considerations that have to be dealt with. Thanks.
Ron, you do know we don't own JLE, right?
I know, but there was discussion about
yeah, I get it.
To work JLA in the past.
Got it. Okay, there's 3 questions, and then I want to wrap this up because we have an executive session that's coming up. Aaliyah, you're first on deck. I mean, in the batter's box.
Okay. So the initial proposal that Galvin had announced involved that, as you mentioned, land swap with that 7th Street lot. I was wondering, you said in the beginning, Tom, that that's no longer part of the equation. I was wondering why, and is there some other arrangement Galvin's looking for in terms of leasing that, or just is there anything that Galvin is asking in return now that that is not part of the offer?
You're asking me that question or Dan Kent?
I'm asking Dan.
Okay.
So we want to see this happen, and we want it to be a easy decision for the city to move forward. So to the extent that transferring the lot in exchange for 400 State Street could end up being an impediment to getting this project done and to helping the city move its city hall to 400 State Street, we wanted this to just be as clean and easy as a process as possible. So even though we did propose that initially, and we thought it was a pretty fair request given what we're offering here, we decided following that it just made more sense to set that discussion aside and revisit that lot at another time. So we don't have any current offers on the table in connection with that lot. Of course, we're still interested in it, and if the city wanted to go ahead and auction that property off, we would be the first at the door for the auction. But at this time, no, it's just we are donating 400 State Street. We are donating 1.4 million in construction costs. We're donating up to $100,000 planning grant. We are not asking for anything in return.
Thank you, Dan. John Kane has a question.
Actually, my first question is to the Common Council, and that question is, kind of piggybacking on what Ronald Kopnicki had just said. We've been doing virtual meetings now for a year. Once COVID ends, a lot of city employees have been working from home, or they've been working part-time from home. Has there been any review of the ADA proposals thus far, and any review of the way that we use the space at City Hall and our municipal offices to see if we don't need that much space? Do we need that much meeting room? Could we utilize meeting room at, say, the firehouse or the library, and reduce our construction costs to make the current City Hall ADA compliant?
It's a question worth pursuing. I'm not sure it works because most of what actually takes place in City Hall and in the code enforcement office has to be done in person. So I'm not sure it really works out that way, but it's worth looking into.
Certainly. And I guess my second question is, if the city was going to lease that lot then to Galvan, I mean, do we know how much the going rate for that would be? Because I imagine it's in high demand, and you could probably squeeze a lot of money out of Galvan now that they've donated to us. I mean, it should go for market rate, right?
Of course, and it would also have to be an open process. There are others interested as well. Heather Campbell has a question, and then we're going to wrap this up for this part for tonight on Galvin. Heather?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just didn't know if I starched sixth enough or not. So I don't really have a question as much as I have a couple of comments. First of all, we're saying that it would include the entire, all the functions of City Hall, but that's not true because it would not include the youth department unless I'm missing something.
Correct.
Okay. The second comment is, as we discussed in the finance meeting, one of the ways we're looking to rebuild the fund balance is by selling buildings and putting that money into fund balance. So to the extent that we sell those buildings and instead apply it against the debt for this new building, that would not help our unassigned fund balance at all. My third comment is that I was on the library board back in the day. And my recollection, although we should definitely get the significant, financial figures, is that it was somewhere between $4 and $8 million for the renovation of that building.
Yeah.
The third floor of the building was completely uninhabitable and was not used by the library at all during the time that it was owned by the library. And then my fourth comment is, I'm just going to echo what John Kane said, which is, I really think it makes sense for the city as a whole to look at what we actually need as space. I can say from my department, and thank goodness this is true, because apparently we only get 300 square feet for 3 people as opposed to the assessor that gets twice as much for 1, is that we can do the majority of our jobs remotely, at this time at least. So I think, and I'd be happy to participate in that. I do really think things are changing, and we talked a little bit about in the finance committee about how commercial properties are going to be I think under probably some significant stress. So I just wanted to echo that comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Dan et al. From the Galvin people. We're definitely going to pursue this more in public in the near future. We'll set up a date. In the meantime, we have to go into executive session. So, let's see.
Resolutions.
I'm sorry,
Tom,
what? Who's that? Yes,
resolution.
I'm sorry. I need
That's
a,
right.
what'd you say?
It's Linda.
Yes.
Do you need to introduce resolutions first?
No, we're going to do that after we go into the executive session. So I need an introduction to go into executive session.
And Tom, for the
Okay.
purposes of discussing potential litigation.
Right. Yes. Rebecca, do I have a second?
Do one.
All those in favor of going to executive session, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, Shaheem, can you? 7 resolutions. Let's plow through them. They're pretty simple, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Oh, okay. That would help. Get you, okay, more. Okay.
Says he's the co-host.
I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, I just said he was the host.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, no, I just, yeah. Cool. Okay. The first resolution. Commissioner of Deeds. We all know what this is, and our own Rebecca Wolf is one of them. Can I have an introduction, please?
Shirsha.
Calvin and Shirsha seconded, right? Shirsha?
Yeah.
Okay, next resolution, please. This is, we did this last year. John Cody is taking Betsy's place on the IDA. So this is just to reappoint him again. Any conversation? Introduction?
Eileen.
Thank you, Eileen. A second?
Shirsha.
Shirsha, thank you, Shirsha. Next resolution, please.
Skipping this one, Tom.
Oh, skip that one, please. Go to the next one. Secretary, yes. Okay, this is establishing the youth department position. I think after much, Jeff, you want to speak about this before? Well, let me get the introduction second first. An introduction, please.
I'll make an introduction, Tom.
Calvin. And a second, please. Someone?
I'll do it.
Okay, Malachi, thank you. Jeff, can you explain this?
Oh,
Did you say no?
yeah.
Oh.
I hadn't,
Oh.
this isn't mine.
Oh, okay.
Maybe Heather can answer
I
this.
can explain it.
Who's that? Oh, is that Nick?
Oh,
Yeah.
Nick, yeah.
Oh, okay, great. I didn't know you were there. Sorry, Nick.
It's just because this position wasn't in the CSEA contract. And so when there's a new position, it has to go through the council.
Okay, there you go.
So can I ask a question? Why did it take 9 months? I don't understand.
Well, because the city doesn't have any procedure or policies on hiring. And so it's pretty complicated. And the labor attorney who we hired just gave this to us as a requirement of kind of how we have to go moving forward. So this is when it came down from the labor attorney.
So it sticks with the theme of we need an HR department.
You got it.
Right.
Tom,
Yes.
is you are not recording this or broadcasting?
Ah, thank you. I put it back
It
on.
is live.
I turned it off for the executive
Oh.
session. We're back, folks, if you're listening on the radio here. Let's see. Okay, so next resolution, please. This is Michael Chimidi still here?
I can talk about this one.
Oh, okay. Let me get an introduction first. Someone?
Calvin, I'll introduce.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second time. Malachi.
Thank you, Malachi. Okay, Jeff.
Well, Michael's here also, but this is it's a grant that is in the process of being awarded by NYSERDA to the city. And a large chunk of it is essentially a pass-through from the city to the Hudson Housing Authority to allow them to replace 53 refrigerators with Energy Star models. And then a secondary part of this is the pay for some energy improvements at 701 Union Street, city property. Michael can add anything if there are any other questions about it, but it's a straight through pass-through contracts.
Great. Next resolution, please.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Can you
Oh,
go
go ahead.
back to the resolution?
Sure.
What did you say, Jeff? What when this resolution goes to the 7 on Union?
It does two things, Tiffany. It provides funds to the Housing Authority to replace 53 refrigerators in their buildings. And then a second part of it is to pay for upgrades to lighting, to LED lighting at 701 Union Street.
And the money that is being produced for the Housing Authority, that comes out of that for 701?
No, that's separate. It comes from, it's a total grant from NYSERDA. Mike, you remember what the total amount was? I'd have to look it up again.
I think
But the
it's
majority
something,
of this goes to the HHA. It's a relatively small amount that goes for the city project.
yeah, the total grant is like 34 or 35,000, and less than 1,000 is for the 701 portion, and the remaining 33 or 34,000 ish goes to HHA.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next resolution, please. This one is the one we heard about from Nick Piro earlier on for the LoSAP program. Can I have an introduction, please?
Eileen, I'll introduce.
Thank you, Eileen. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Calvin. I don't think anybody has further questions about that. Can we go to the next resolution, please, Cheyenne? This is a simple resolution. It just allows, we had paid some expenses out of our, the council fund. And it actually is going to come out of the tourism board because they were the ones using the secretary. And they approved it, and now we're going to approve it. Can I have an introduction? Someone. Hello?
Eileen, I'll introduce.
Oh, thank you, Eileen.
Yep.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
All
that.
right.
Uh-oh. We have competing, who's Malachi?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving right along, the last resolution. And this is, there was not enough to meet the payroll at the police department. Heather seems to have found money in the hospitalization budget. And that's what this resolution addresses. Can I start?
Heather, how did you come about to find that the money so fast like that?
Heather, are you there? I don't know if she's here. In the meantime, can I get an
No,
intro?
I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, it's the *6 thing. I keep turning it on and off.
Oh.
The reason that they are over budget is because more people took the hospitalization buyout than was initially planned. So that meant that we did not have the associated hospitalization expenses. So we were able to take the money from that account to cover the hospitalization buyouts. And if I could, I would like to just make one correction to what Nick said. Technically, the Secretary 1 resolution is not because it's not in CSEA, because that is a completely different discussion, and the union would have to decide if they want to add that position or not. The issue is because that the Common Council had not approved a civil service position, Secretary 1, as being something that the city could hire. So it's just it's a minor detail, but it's technically true. So.
Okay, can I have an introduction, please? Someone. Come on, we're almost done.
I'll make an introduction time.
Calvin, thank you. A second, please?
I'm a second it, Walker.
Malachi, thank you, sir. Okay, that's it for the resolutions. There's still a local law on your desk. Let's open it up. Is there any old and new business that the council would like to talk about first?
Hi, Tom. I have some stuff. It's Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca, okay.
Um,
Go for it, Rebecca.
Well, I have like 4 things, but I'm just gonna say it as like 4 sentences to just speed
Okay,
along.
1 second. Shaheem, can you take that down, please? We don't need to right now. Okay, go ahead, Rebecca, sorry.
So John Rosenthal and I have been continuing to work on inclusionary zoning, and we were going to do just a little report, but we're not. But just to say that in March, we will have a resolution regarding inclusionary zoning, which will be sort of part of a first, it's part 1 of like a program of some tax related and other measures to essentially create more affordability. That's the goal for housing. Number 2 is I would like to, can I share my screen for 1 second, Tom?
Sure. Shaheem, there you go.
Do you see this Commissioner of Grants thing?
Yes.
So this is something that's in our city code. We're supposed to have a Commissioner of Grants. And it's occurred to me that this is a really important missing piece in our process regarding grant writing, and that this role, this is exactly what we are missing. We need somebody whose job it is to look over the availability of federal funding and recommend to the grant writers. I'm not sure who you're hearing. Duan.
I got it.
To see what available federal and state funds there are, and instruct grant writers in applying for them. So I'm going to ask for a resolution at the formal meeting that would basically recommend that the mayor appoint such a commissioner of grants. So I just wanted to introduce that. Let's see, number 3 has to do with parking tickets. In the city of Hudson, in our city code, it says that the parking tickets are supposed to have they're supposed to come with not just the parking ticket itself, but also with an appearance process, so that the person who receives the ticket can show up in person to appeal the ticket. And currently we don't have that happening, and a constituent has brought that to my attention. And so I'm requesting that we investigate this, basically, because
Definitely.
it's incorrect. So that's 3 things.
On that one also, I know you sent me something today, Rebecca. I didn't get a chance to get back to you. I've
Yeah.
taken over the responsibility apparently of reviewing the appeals on the parking tickets.
Right.
Oh, man.
And I know, then we're fixing some of those things, and I'll have to talk to, I guess it's Sharon or Kim.
Kim Gaylord, yeah.
Yeah, Kim. I believe it does go out with the notice on how to make the appearances, that it's on the ticket. I know I fixed something on it just recently, but I'll have to look at it. But I thought there was a notice that went out with it.
No, I don't think so. Not, I mean,
All right.
yeah, no.
Not on the ticket
And
itself.
then number 4 is to ask Jeff. Jeff, did you have a chance to do any more research on the fair housing officer language for the city code?
No, I'm going to look into it. I've talked to Tom about it, and I'm going to start looking at that.
Do you think that you can have a resolution for the formal meeting?
No.
Okay, so
Oh my goodness.
so for the March informal meeting?
I'll look at it for the March meeting. Yeah.
But can you actually have a resolution for the March informal meeting?
Not necessarily until I figure out what the potential needs are for having one, and then we would have to have a discussion.
We've actually already defined that, I think, pretty well.
Absolutely.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
Absolutely.
Wait. You have a provision in your code for a fair housing officer. It has not been used for a long time. You also have a housing commission that's supposed to look at it. You don't have one of those either. You have to look at deciding what you want that person to do, and if you're going to want a budget to create that position of what it's going to do, especially when you've already just funded a housing displacement officer.
Well, that's not irrelevant, honestly. The anti-displacement, like, that's a whole separate thing. The fair housing officer is something that comes down from the federal government, and which is mandated for local municipalities to have a fair housing officer. And what I'm asking you to do is to determine what is the necessary language that we need in order to fulfill those requirements of the federal government's fair housing office.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to look at, and and then we'll figure it out whether that turns into an actual resolution without having a discussion first with some of the council members. We'll have to look at, but I'll research that and figure that out, and we'll get back in time for the next meeting, for the March meetings.
Okay.
And just for the record, we have been discussing it for years. For years.
It's gone on and on. And we also have, I mean, I think it's really not part of what I'm asking, or we are asking you to do, is to talk about like what's the pay rate for that role, or what are the defined tasks of that role. We're just asking you to determine what are the requirements that we need to have in the code.
I think we just need to tell him the requirements that we want and just have him write the resolution. So it can be as simple as that, because the way it sounds to me, it could be pushed from March and on and on and on to the next election. And we're trying to fulfill this position now.
Yeah, but Tiffany, it's just that part we can do. You and I can do that part. The requirements, the blah, blah, like the job itself. You and I can cover that. It's the legal language that gives it like enforcement ability that we need to have research that is not. I mean, I've tried to do this research, and it like I'm not a lawyer, and lawyers don't get back to me, and so basically. This is something we need help with.
I'll look at it.
Okay, we have two
Right.
questions.
Can
Oh,
I got a question.
Okay.
Jeff, when you look at that, can you also check that if we as a municipality create that position, so we don't revisit this civil service thing, if that then becomes a civil service position, if we create a city position, the municipality,
It would be a civil, if you create it, it will be a civil service position.
Well, but so we already have it in the city code. So
No, you don't.
Yes.
No, we don't. No, we
No,
don't.
you
It's
don't.
part
It's
of
HCDPA, it's the HCDPA administrator serves that role now.
Well, but I guess
Right.
it's a question whether, I mean, the role is created and then it was appointed as the HCDPA officer, but it's not clear whether the role exists independently of that appointment.
It does not.
All right.
But moving forward, we create the position, we create the civil service position, then it's a whole big, we have to go legally through. We don't want to go backwards to what we just did with the civil service issue.
Right, no,
And-
Dominic's right. It has to be, if you're going to create the position, it'll be created with a civil service description and approved by the council and established that way.
Mhm.
And additionally, with the commissioner of grants, if it's already in the code, for the mayor to appoint, what is our role? Isn't that the role of the mayor to appoint the commissioner of grants?
It is.
I'm
but
just asking for
yes,
resolution to request that the mayor do that.
Okay, can we just ask them?
I mean, sure, but it also might as well be on paper.
Okay.
Okay, Michael Chimides has a question or a comment?
I was just going to jump in about civil service and say that my understanding is that any new position needs to have a civil service description. That's an employee of the city. The county does have a fair housing officer, which means that there's already a civil service. The county has a civil service description of what a fair housing officer would do. So I don't see the civil service piece being a major challenge. It's something that needs to happen. I just wanted to throw that out.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And now we have some hands up from the public. Ron Kupnicki.
I have
Oh, sorry, Tiffany. I thought you had already. Go ahead, Tiffany first. Sorry, Ron.
no, I'll wait till after the public ask their questions and have it as new business.
Okay, Ron.
I have a statement about your email on council reform.
Say that again?
A statement about your email to the council members about council reform, which you sent out to them on January 19th.
How long is this statement?
What? How long is it?
Yeah.
It's about 3 minutes long.
And
it's a response to your criticism of my position on council reform, which you embodied in an email you sent to council members, according to Gossips of Rivertown. I'm relying on Gossip's account of this email.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you saying you didn't send it?
No, I didn't say
Go.
anything.
He's saying go, Ron, go.
Okay.
Get your 3
I'm
minutes.
responding to an email sent by the council president to aldermen on the night of January 19th, in which he commented on criticisms of his council committee reorganization plan made by myself and Matt McGee. His email contained a proviso that it might be shared by aldermen with any interested constituents. Though I'm an interested constituent, neither of my first ward representatives shared it with me. Neither did the council president, though since he is elected at large, I am his constituent, and we have corresponded in the past by text and email. I'm referring to the text of his email as reproduced in the Gossips of Rivertown post of January 23rd. He alleges that I favor direct democracy, which he first defines as a situation in which legislation is made by a primary assembly of citizens. I don't favor this and have not called for it. Later in the same paragraph, he identifies direct democracy with the desire of citizens to have input in all our actions, even though they are not elected officials. I do favor maximum input of the citizens of Hudson in the actions of its government, and I oppose attempts to reduce the citizens' opportunity to participate. He asserts that the founders of our country did not establish direct democracy. True. They established a Republican, that is, representative form of government with a democratic emphasis. Thus, the Constitution first defines the powers of the legislative branch, and within it, the most democratic component, the House of Representatives. The democratic emphasis of the House is threefold. It has the most members and can best represent the diversity of the population. Its members face the voters more frequently every 2 years, and they are all up for re-election at the same time. In this democratic emphasis, the Common Council resembles the House, and this is why I opposed attempts to increase the lengths of council terms and stagger them. Under the former committee system, committee assignments were distributed among the wards, and in accordance with the aldermen's interests. This made the system representative and gave the committee chairs and the committees a certain prominence and a mediating role between the council as a whole and the president. I was very interested in this year's council organizational meeting because I remembered the controversy at last year's meeting over the method of choosing the minority leader, which resulted in a rule tying the majority and minority leader positions to party registrations. This year, there was no controversy. I was then surprised by the council president's proposal to eliminate the long-established system of standing committees in favor of an ad hoc system. He had apparently teased this move in response to a question at a meeting of the Conservation Advisory Council, referring to his rethinking the situation, which made me wonder if he planned to reshuffle committee assignments. But he had something more drastic in mind. The council accepted this change unanimously. It was only subsequently, when Matt McGee and I were able to ask questions about the change, that any rationale for the aldermen's agreement with the proposal became evident. Any discussion or debate they might have had was conducted out of public view. This procedure underscores the importance.
Ron, what happened?
Well, great.
Ron?
I don't know what he's trying to get at, but I mean, I do, but I don't, none of that seems to
Oh,
apply.
he's back on. He's back on.
Okay. I don't know where I was cut off, but I'll start with my last paragraph then. I was very interested in this year's council organizational meeting because I remembered the controversy at last year's meeting over the method of choosing the minority leader, which resulted in a rule tying the majority and minority leader positions to party registration. This year, there was no controversy. I was then surprised by the council president's proposal to eliminate the long-established system of standing committees in favor of an ad hoc system. He had apparently teased this move in response to a question at a meeting of the Conservation Advisory Council, referring to his rethinking the situation, which made me wonder if he planned to reshuffle committee assignments. But he had something more drastic in mind. The council accepted this change unanimously. It was only subsequently, when Matt McGee and I were able to ask questions about the change, that any rationale for the aldermen's agreement with the proposal became evident. Any discussion or debate they might have had was conducted out of public view. This procedure underscores the importance of public input, especially if the council's unanimity continues. The inspiration for debate and the disclosure of information must then come from the public, if not also from the media. I'm going to end where I began, with the council president's email to its members. He proceeds as if this issue is a private conversation between him and them, a closed circle. No, the public is part of this conversation on this and all issues, especially at this critical time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. You know, Ron, let me just point out one thing. You complain about not being able to speak, but you always are actually speaking when you do
Well,
that.
thank you. I'm not complaining about not being able to speak. I'm complaining about your move to eliminate the standing committees and eliminate the opportunity of the public to participate in those meetings, if only to observe. At your ad hoc meetings, will the public be able to observe?
Absolutely.
Matt would also
comment.
Matt, oh, well, I'm very grateful to you. Matt would like to make a statement.
Can you keep it short, Matt, please?
Yes,
As much as I enjoy your statements, can you keep it short, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. As said on January 19th, Article 4, Section 4 guarantees a representative form of government. The word representative appears in Article 4, Section 4 in its Latin form, Republican, meaning to vote by representative. If the Constitution does not trickle down to the states, as stated by legal counsel, then what are we to believe? Are we to believe that the states, county, and local government need not have a representative form of government? May they abridge this right at will? Amendment 1 says, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Even though the states are not mentioned, this applies to state law and is an accepted fact of constitutional law. This is made clear in Article 6. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. Article 4, Section 4 is one of our most important rights. And our rights in Amendment 1 are our most important means of securing the blessings of government of the people, by the people, and for the people, through a form of representative government as set forth by the framers of the Constitution, the democratic nature of which has increased over time through direct election of senators and extending the franchise to vote to all citizens 18 years of age and over. A new amendment for direct election of the president would be a further enhancement of the democratic nature of our republic. The Constitution regulates actions of local governments, local courts, and local police. It not only trickles down, it flows over all government, and the support of protects our liberty to participate in an open and just room. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We have a question from Carol.
It's not a question, it's Carol Osterink. And during your executive session, I dug out a brochure that was prepared when the library was starting its capital campaign for restoring the building. That includes an itemized list of the expenses, which add up to $8.8 million.
Thank you.
I scanned it and I will send it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That'll be very helpful. And Tiffany gets the last word.
Thank you. I just want to tell the council members, I received an email about a decision that's coming up on the planning board about the proposal to have the antennas over the Providence Hall building for Verizon. There's a huge concern and the public does not want it, particularly over the heads of senior citizens. So I'm asking everyone on the council to reach out to your constituents as well and send letters, emails of concern and telling the planning board to please not to support this proposal that the public does not want and can see harm.
Let me, Tom, I just have to
have
caution
this over
everybody
there.
on that, as I understand the concerns
Thank
that
you.
many people have about that or have voiced their concerns regarding potential health impacts associated with the cell towers. The city is preempted. It is precluded from denying a permit based upon potential or perceived health impacts from cell towers, as long as the antennas are operating at the power limits as set by the FCC. These are, the city's consultant has confirmed that they are within the parameters. People have their beliefs. I'm not going to put any comments on, their concerns about, but this is a flat out legal prohibition where the city is not allowed to deny a permit because of that. And if it did, it would be sued by Verizon and it could be serious consequences. So we have to be very careful about that in terms of people, taking information from the internet or beliefs or something that it's a wrong standard. You may have that belief, but it is outside the city's control to do anything about that. That's something that has to be brought up at all with a federal regulation.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And my position is to alert the public to submit their concerns and where want their support and to send and where to send it. Just to be clear.
Well, if people have concerns about it, they should write to the FCC.
They can also write to the planning board where it's also being discussed and voted.
But the point is that puts the planning board in a difficult position, being asked to do something that they don't have authority to do. So I appreciate the concerns that people.
That's the way we communicate with our constituents today and now. They send us emails of their concerns of whatever is laying on our desk on the agenda for whatever proposal comes to us. I'm stating the same thing to the public. If these are their concerns, they can send it where it goes to the planning board. That's where it's being voted on and discussed. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
With that, this has been a long meeting. And I do want to hear from everyone, not just the council, about, I think we might have to, a possibility you might want to consider is 2 informal meetings rather than going back to the committee, or we'll see, we'll just see. At this point, it's still an experiment. Any final comments, Rebecca?
Oh, just what about having the committee reports at the formal meeting instead of the informal where, at the formal, people don't, usually have as much to say.
I made that suggestion. I even made a suggestion of even creating a separate day on the calendar just to receive these reports.
Right. So those are all possibilities, and We'll discuss them in public, Ron, so don't worry. Anything else from anyone before we wrap this up? I
Motion
frankly
to
like a
adjourn.
long meeting. I think we accomplished a lot.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, Tiffany made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll be in a second.
Ron and Calvin, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone object?
Peace.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you.